Just a moment. We're going to be discussing some stuff. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope nobody has swallowed any bleach or done anything hasty. Nothing's set in stone just yet. We're still in discussion. And basically, here's the goal. The goal here is not to sit here and lampoon Overwatch. Our goal is to sit here and think why they made this change, what the ramifications of this change may or may not be, and try and come up with some positives and try and come up with some negatives that haven't already been hashed out over and over and over again. Sorry. Okay. Renee, you ready? Let's see here. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm alright.
Appreciate you doing this. So, Renee, do you want to kind of give yourself a quick introduction before we start talking this through?
I'm Rene. I founded and played off-tank on EXA, Ex Oblivione, in EU Contenders for the last 2 years ago. Coached for a little bit. Now I'm kind of away from things for a bit with uni stuff, but
Sure.
yeah, been around for a while with EXA. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
And
Well,
maybe employed now.
sure. Okay. Cool. So, like, you were the you were an off-tank main, and so obviously your opinion is going to be kind of interesting here. I guess like the way we can do this is let me actually pull up a Word document here because I'd love to like actually document the thoughts from chat and your thoughts as well. So like Overwatch 2 here, and then let me fix up my UI.
Not
that's
bad.
supposed to happen. Okay. And image 2. Yeah, we'll put this in the corner. Okay, so we wanted to talk over like all the changes. So you made a list. You did me a huge favor, and you made like the list of all the stuff that we talked about. So what, like, in order of like, I guess it's just in order of chronological, like what was discussed.
First thing they did was just 5v5. They kind of just went out the gate with that. I guess there was no avoiding it because if they showed any gameplay, that was the first thing they started with 5v5.
So I really feel like I guess we should just go ahead and crank on that then. So I wanted to hear, like, do you, before we even like get into like lampooning the whole 5v5 thing, do you think that there's any like positive side or way of spinning the 5 versus 5 thing?
I think it's less likely that we'll get stuff like, well, obviously we won't have stuff like double shield, but I think what we can't have anymore is metas where it's like hard cooldown rotation type thing, where it's like your main tank, off tank, they go between cooldowns and you kind of just sit in one choke like for 10 minutes with rotating the same thing. I think by having one tank, it forces you to kind of be in or out. There's less.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So like I think what you were saying is like goats existed because we had a lot of brawl stuff, and a lot of the like there just isn't going to be the same kind of brawl that maybe what we've seen before, at least as much.
Yeah, people aren't going to last as long, and I think the way they're doing with maps as well, kind of tying into it.
Yeah.
Like especially the push maps, they're like really chaotic. Like they're like U-shaped or S-shaped, and you can basically spawn and go straight to where the fight is going, like dodge like half the map.
Right.
And I think what that's trying to kind of push towards is that it's less like, think like, I don't know, Blizzard World first point defense, where you stand on left side of point or right side of point. Double shield, Rhine, whatever, you sit there and then you play for like 3 minutes with your map or whatever.
No, wait a second. Do you have it, like, is there an example, like, so you're saying like the entire map shape is different? So do we have like an example of this, chat? Or
if you go on the stream, you just go through the VOD, it's pretty clear.
Okay.
Like
do you have like a
first
timestamp
game
for
they
me?
show.
Because I missed this, because I would...
Probably like 20-30 minutes in, they play the first map.
Okay.
Where they show the first push
Because
map.
I would be very interested if
Oh no, they start with New York. So it's the second map.
Okay.
He helped out a lot.
But effectively what it's like is like, I think this is going to be very, at least on the new map types, it's going to be very difficult to like hold one place. So this is the first map. This is a hybrid map.
Okay.
That one you're on now, that's
So I need to
push.
skip forward then.
No, this one now is fine.
Okay, this is
The
fine.
one with the Lucio POV.
Okay,
Yeah,
now I gotta watch this then, because like the way you describe it, because like the big thing that I've tried to do is like talk about like map control and flank control and angle control and like how that like, kind of dictates Overwatch and things like that. But like if you're saying this is like completely different there, that might even change like the fundamentals of map control. Like maybe it doesn't matter so much. So like, it's like okay, you run to the robot.
It was like this is like a first fight cost type thing.
Yeah.
So you have
exactly.
30 seconds. It won't unlock. You have kind of time to find your footing.
Okay.
But looking at the games, I don't know if it's like a symptom of watching goal players play, but it looks like with one tank especially, like where do you set up? You know?
Yeah.
Because it's all over the place when you start pushing across. There's like a million flanks DPS can get on. You don't have like an off tank anymore that can mark one flank. There isn't even like
Yeah.
enough people to mark things.
So this is would still be important to control. So like maybe. And then what happens? Okay, so Team Red looks like they're winning this. Okay. Okay, so they sends the robot back, and he pushes.
But the
other
robot
one.
walks between the barricade, and the barricade is like what we previously had with like the payload max distance
And
that you just saw on like
this is
UI.
blue side spawn here. So, okay, so they're pushing it closer and closer and closer towards their spawn.
Yeah, so you
and
go towards spawn,
it
and
gets
until you get to the
harder and harder and
checkpoint,
harder.
yeah. So when you get to the checkpoint, it gives you a forward spawn, which
Yeah.
can get undone if they get back to the middle.
Interesting.
So if red team were to get all the way to that circle on the right of your screen, they would get a forward spawn, but it would get reset.
I mean,
if blue team then pushed it back.
this looks a lot like Payload, right? Where you kind of almost have to anticipate where the fuck's going to happen and set up around that. The thing that
Yeah.
I think makes it awkward for me is like, at least with this in comparison to Payload, maybe it's just this map. I don't see a lot of advantageous positions here, right? Like there's a little flank here. There's a ton of just a wall. And then if you flip to the other POV, there's nothing here. There's nothing like between this high ground here and like what looks to be some space over here. There's nothing at all that's advantageous for attackers at all, right? So, interesting. Okay, so these maps are going to be throwing me off. Now, a lot of these maps, did we see how many of these maps like felt more enclosed to you, or like versus like more open?
They never really had long sightlines. It definitely feels like they're trying to kind of counteract. Like everyone's had a lot of concerns with like, oh, double sniper's gonna be really good because there's only one tank to deal with it, whatever. And it seems like they're trying to counteract that with like more map design and like very deathmatchy maps where it's like the sightlines aren't that long, and in that sense, then DPS can
Okay.
deal with snipers more, where you can
Okay.
flank and you can take kind of mid-range angles.
Okay.
But yeah, it is very kind of enclosed, brawly kind of. That's what they're aiming for.
Right. Okay, so one obvious like drawback of the 5 versus not drawback, but adjustment with the 5 versus 5 is we talk about like how DPS can control space and tanks can control space. Well, it's gonna be a lot of DPS controlling space now, which to me means that, like we said about the whole brawl adjustment, moving away from brawl, I feel like that's gonna enable supports like Briggs and Zens and things like that can control across the map, right? And they don't have to be in one spot. And like, in other words, if we're playing like to control the map, if you have one less tank hero, you're going to be relying more on your DPS to like play for flanks and win flanks and things like that on their own, like you were saying, holding space, which means heroes like Brig and Zen who can throw armor packs and Harmony and Discord and things like that, I think is going to be a little bit more valuable. Like Lucio feels like he's going to be trash. Lucio's going to have to be reworked.
Yeah, on these maps, at least he definitely would be, because it's like, yeah, as you said, it's like there's no longer like one choke where you play with Lucio or everyone in your team fits in it. It's like Brig Zen, you can cover the map, you can spread your 2 DPS out with one tank everywhere.
Yep. Now I have a bone to pick, because I think something that we can talk about here is like there's a word that's getting thrown around a lot, and I think the way you're using it and the way other people are using it are different. Okay, and this is the word. All right, let me get my little. I can actually use. I know that I have text here. Deathmatch. I always forget this. Oh my gosh, deathmatch. Okay. Now, when you say deathmatch, what do you mean by that? So before I like start lampooning.
The way I see deathmatch is like the concept of kind of like frontline backline is kind of broken down.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no like clear place where it's like this bit of the map there's no fighting, this bit of map there is fighting. It's kind of like everywhere has like a fairly even to being fought in. There's no super great positions. There's no super weak positions.
Mm-hmm.
So every fight just devolves. Really. That's the way I kind of see it.
Sure. So there's like less of a this is front line. This is where we're brawling, fighting, smashing mouth. This is it's just kind of like a fluid.
Yeah.
It's almost like a like. Do you know what Daddy Longlegs is? Have you ever heard of that spider? Or is that
Yes.
just like anything? Okay. So it's like for those in chat who don't know, it's like a Daddy Longlegs got like a really, really, really tiny body and like these super long legs. And like this is kind of like how I look at like this new Overwatch 2 is that there's like these like little minute like tiny little core, you know, it's not much of a core, but these tiny little engagements that are happening very far away from multiple different positions. Now Reddit obviously is like flipping out and Twitter's flipping out and everybody's flipping out. So there's all sorts of like crazy crap that's being thrown out. And I think I want to try and strain some of that out because we can be negative about this, but we don't have to be stupid about this. One of the things that I'm consistently seeing is that, oh, now it's just going to be complete chaos and there's no team play and that it's just complete lack of coordination. Actually, let me see if I can find the comment because I think it's something that I want to not necessarily discuss so much as just shoot down and say, I don't want to hear this anymore in my chat at all. Okay, let me see, where was it? Let's see here. Oh yeah, exactly. So one of the comments I'm looking at here, I'll actually just throw it on my chat right here. He's losing the Overwatch match. Views go up, but the game plays like team deathmatch. Okay. I'd be easier to watch, but with way less strategy and coordination. Like if you want to watch DPS at each other, poke at each other, play fine. Like what a whole load of horse manure. Like obviously it's going to change how the game is played, and it might be like less fun to watch. It might be less fun to play. Like we'll talk about that. But saying that, oh, this one fewer tank, and now that just completely ruins the coordination, that's the most plat chat take I've ever heard in my life. There's going to be a lot of coordination about controlling the map, and like we've talked about already, about Brig and Zen will be used to kind of help their flankers and their DPS win different wars. As a tank, I think your job is going to be a lot trickier and a lot weirder about how you're controlling space and how you're pushing space, but it's not at all going to be anything like Team Deathmatch at all. The spawns are not RNG. You're not going to be playing to, like, the goal is not to just try and get as many kills as you can. The goal is to win team fights, just like it is in Overwatch. So I think the first thing, like, I want to shoot down, and Renee, I want your thoughts on this as well, is that like this whole, oh, it's going to be like team deathmatch, it's going to be completely chaotic, it's just going to be DPS popping off the entire time. Garbage. That is not at all something that is even going to be the case whatsoever.
I think the kind of starting point of like if people got put in Overwatch 2 like today, people would just play bulk comps. The same kind of idea. Like what we see now is bulk comp where like the second tank barely tanked, he was basically in his backline anyway. That's where I see like people would as a starting point for Overwatch 2.
Right.
If like the heroes weren't changed drastically or anything.
Right. I think the thing, like, if we want to talk about like interesting changes with tank lines, and I want your thoughts on this here. So my first thought when I saw this, especially with the maps that we were seeing being played, I'm like, oh, Ryan's got to be dead. Right? Ryan's got to be dead because he's a tank that wants a lot of support. He doesn't work well with the supports like Briggs and Mercy that look immediately appetizing for these types of compositions, these points. And I think he's also, like you were saying, he's the tank that's going to be hit the hardest by the more open, pulling it apart, less brawl, core-centered playstyle because he can't reach a lot of stuff, right? If he's not rotating as a clump, then he's not going to be doing a whole lot. Like, I don't know. Did you play during GOATs, right?
Yeah, I played.
Okay. So, like, when we see these triple, like, whenever I think of, like, what I expect the new tank playstyle to be like, I expect it to be more like the triple DPS versus GOATs kind of playstyle, where you play, like, Ball or something like that, that was just, like, self-sustained and just kind of was generally there to harass and disrupt for the most part, and to, like, either contest or hold space. So I look at this and I'm like, I mean, you guys have, I don't know how many, you guys have all played Quick Play Classic, right? You know, you get the 4 DPS. You're not going to go Reinhardt. You're going to go Ball, or you're going to go Hog, or you're going to go Sigma, right? Maybe you'll go like a Zarya or something like that. But I think that, to me, and I think the reason why I want those tanks is because they don't demand a ton of healing. And they also are relatively, they either have good range or good mobility. What are your thoughts?
I think... So with the Ryan thing, they actually addressed that kind of distancing. They made his charge cancelable, they made it more turnable, and they're giving him 2 fire strikes. So definitely aware of Ryan's kind of shortcomings when he hasn't got that tank partner and when it's more chaotic. But I think it also depends on map geometry as well. Like it depends does King's Row get changed? Ryan will still be good on King's Row.
Yeah.
If in Overwatch 2, he'll still be good. But it depends, do they make King's Row super flanky? He'll still have kind of points where he can shine if they don't match the kind of newer maps.
Yep.
So maybe it's that tank player, the kind of tank role kind of converges in like a middle ground between off tank and main tank, where it's like, yes, you have to harass and move around a bit more, but you kind of need a balance of the skill sets, because like in a sense, the newer kind of playstyle that they're aiming for matches kind of how off tanks played more, where it's more dynamic, it's more between your front line and your back line, more kind of dueling people and stuff like that, less than the main tank, I rotate my CDs in a choke or on a corner. So it might be that tanks kind of merge and some off tanks go to DPS and some go to main tank or like the tank, and it kind of merges. But yeah, I think the independent tanks on push will see a lot more use. But then in the other maps, I'm curious to what they do, especially with like Orisa and Sigma, who are like, they weren't played at all on stream because they were like quarantined or something for like drastic changes.
Okay.
So I'm curious to what they do today, because they explicitly said that because they were static, they were looking at them. So I guess the idea is that they want to make tanks as a whole more flexible.
Right. I think that's interesting though, because like what you're saying about like having main tanks play like more like an off tank playstyle, because I think the idea with things is still that they should be, at least with main tanks and current Overwatch, is that they still create space. But we've seen this with the return of like the Cloudies, right? The LH Cloudies, and that there is no more, you can just W mouse one onto point and then just force point and survive. I think like objective pressure, AoE sustain, DPS power creep to an extent, all of those things have kind of impacted how main tanks have to play, and so that like clearing angles, clearing flanks, clearing and holding high grounds has become a lot more important, and that's something that we've seen a lot, like especially like brawl into dive, brawl into spam, things like that, and not just like the evolvement of that in terms of the game balance, but also in terms of as people's understanding of the game gets better. Like you go back and I guarantee you watch GM Reinhardt from like 2-3 years ago, a lot of them just going to go AFK on point, or they're not going to go clear high ground. I remember, who was it? Was it Gesture? There was some Korean Reinhardt who would play Reinhardt, something like Overwatch League Reinhardt, who play Reinhardt on Gibraltar, and he would go and clear high ground, right? As Reinhardt on first point Gibraltar. And at the time, I remember people were going like, what on earth? Clearing high ground is Reinhardt? Like, what are you doing? You're playing him like a monkey. And now we look back at that now and we're like, well, duh. Like, what else are you going to do? Sit on cart? Like, you're just going to insta-die. Like, that just seems like such the easiest thing. So I think that the thing that's making this less, like, more understandable and less, like, the end is nigh for me here is because I feel like that the game was already moving that direction. People were understanding that like you cannot just hold shield and stand in main and just run it down mid over and over again. You just can't do that anymore. You can't do that with Winston. You can't do that with Reinhardt. You can't do that at all. Like controlling the map, controlling the angles is really important. The concern, like you were saying, is like with the Orisa Sigma stuff, is that we've got tanks that like Reinhardt can do that, but he's not he's not as good at it as compared to like a D.Va, right? Or like a Zarya, and he's also slow. And so like you have all these shortcomings about these more static tanks, and I'm concerned about it. Okay. So less hard brawl, not going to be random TDS, less strategy. At least they're looking at the static tanks. Do you have any other thoughts on like the overall positives for this? They talked a little bit about like visual clutter. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's kind of hard to like look at it from an objective standpoint because I've played the game for so long, so I'm kind of like used to the clutter part. I always hear like people saying that when their friend watches Overwatch for the first time, they have no clue what's going on, for example. So it's certainly from like getting people to watch the game for the first time would be easier for people to deal with. And I guess in certain scenarios where like the Bat Brigger Orisa Sigma metas where like on a corner you have 6 people in each other's faces, that to an extent gets lowered.
Yes.
I don't know if it's like a good or bad thing. It definitely like isn't like super enjoyable, but I don't know if it's like you remove a role just because of those instances.
Right. And
I don't think it's like a massive thing.
If it is a negative that the visual clutter is a problem, we're not saying that this is the best solution for that. We're just saying it is.
But yes, it will certainly kind of lighten things up, especially because just the comps that kind of arise from not having 2 tanks means you can't lock down in those like positions so much.
Absolutely. Do you have anything else that you think is a positive? I want to think about this, and then I want to ask chat what they think, because I think it would be good to have 150 people actually think about ideas and not just 2.
I mean, I think the direction that they're taking the game, in a sense, as you said, with like how people are moving in that direction already, I guess they're kind of aware of where the game is sort of going. It's that it's going to be more about like not just playing on the objective, controlling the rest of the map. And if you look at like the new hybrid maps, especially, the capture points are like all surrounded by high grounds. They don't go through the payloads don't go through chokes anymore. They go like under bridges, and it's kind of more like snaking roads and paths around the point. So it's definitely clear that they're looking more at these things like angle control and stuff, and making it perhaps less outdated maps, like where it's like one oppressive angle that you have to control instead of they're
Yep.
kind of making it more complicated.
Right.
There's more angles to control and you've got less people to do it, so how do you spread that up? So it might be that by the time we get, we've still got like what 2 years of Overwatch 1 before we have Overwatch 2, and God knows what
Right.
how we'll be playing by then. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. It makes sense. Like if you look at Kings Row Third, to me, that's such an that's like feels like a very archaic map design.
Yeah.
Like it just like big high ground that like basically nobody can access, basically no flanks, basically no control, nothing. The health packs are kind of like it's a weird map design. And then you compare that with like I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
If you go on the stream, actually, if you look at the first map they show, New York, the third point on that is kind of like Kings Row Third, but like modernized in a sense. It's like the high grounds are kind of around the point instead, and it kind of flows into like an open bit.
Alright,
So it's the
so-
first map. It's like
right,
fairly early on in
so-
the stream.
alright, so we're in
Yeah, this
here.
one. So this is second point now.
Right.
Yeah. So when it gets to like the inside bit, they're coming into it now. This is kind of like what they're trying to go at, I think.
Right. So it's like indoors, but it's like
Yeah.
So like I'm just looking here, high ground here, high ground flank here, high ground flank here, some cover here, obviously high ground here, control here. It feels like in a way it feels so open, but also that there's so many corners and alcoves. It feels like every map. This feels like wide open space, but also it's not quite wide open space at the same time.
So something they mentioned is that to kind of counterbalance the lack of tanking, they were going to add more like natural cover. So they're going to make people use corners more, use like small walls, use alcoves, use boxes, stuff like that.
Right, because I feel like Widow would be oppressive here, right? But then I'm also like, well, you can play over here, and then you can play over here, and then you can play here, and then you can play here, and I'm not sure where this leads to on the left here, but I feel like there are a decent amount of options to play around the relatively longer sightlines here. So I'm just, like, I want to get a better feel of this. Yeah, there's a lot of space. Holy smokes!
So that's what I was kind of thinking with like the kind of counterbalance to Widow having one less tank to deal with is that she now has a lot more places to worry about. You can't just stick Venom Mine on the one flank that exists and then play it out.
It's funny that people are talking about this because I remember distinctly a narrative that was being pushed around a lot right before Goat's meta came around is that Dive is too strong because and Ryan is bad because there are too many high grounds in Overwatch. The map design is imbalanced. And this is because, Reinhardt's were kind of stupid and they didn't know how to clear high ground and stuff. But like, I really do wonder if this whole evolution does kind of mirror because they on purpose are thinking about what we're talking about, like angle control and things like that. Like are we just like, is it like we just because we think it's that so, or is there some like obviously like the elephant in the room here, and I'm going all over the place, is the queue time, right? And I think that's the thing that we need to. I mean, it has to go into the positives here. I mean, queue times it's a big problem.
For sure. Yeah.
It's. I mean, what are the, I mean, you tell me. You still play ranked to it like off and on, right?
Yeah, now and then.
Okay, so compare on average tank time to DPS and tank time to support time for me because I don't know what it's like at the higher rings.
It was normally tank shortest queues, and then it's like sometimes support is the longest queue. Actually, I saw people complaining about that. It's kind of changed a bit now with the priority passes because people all over the place like off rolling and stuff. So it's kind of balanced out. Actually, the priority passes I think have helped it.
Yep.
But yeah, typically it was tanks insta queue, DPS longest, and then on some days support's long as well, but like in the middle.
Yeah.
But yeah, having one fewer tanks definitely.
It feels,
yeah,
I
so one fewer
know,
tanks definitely adds to that. Helps it. I mean.
For sure. So like it's without question, and I've seen this with like plats and diamonds and silvers as well. As like even there, it's usually like tanks have the shortest queue time. Tanks have the shortest queue time over and over and over and over again, and like I mean that hurts because that hurts everybody because what it means is like if there are fewer tanks, that means that there's fewer DPS. Like that just increases the queue times for everybody else. So like again, we don't know if this is the best solution for that. I mean, I know this is something that was talked about. Like maybe we should make tanks more interactive or more interesting. The fact that we haven't had a new tank in such a long time also hurts that. I mean, we haven't had any new heroes in a long time, but like a new tank hero would definitely appeal to more people. I mean, we still have like less than half the tanks than I think we do of DPS, so that's a problem. But yeah, okay. Chat, I want to pause a second. What do you guys think are some potential positives of this whole 5 versus 5 approach? I think that we talked about queue time, less objective based. Devs are kind of adjusting with maybe the times in terms of like what we understand to be the game, the way to play the game. Less visual clutter. They are looking at static tanks. That's not forgotten. It's not going to be as bad as people say in terms of the random TDM less strategy. It's not at all going to be the case. Definitely going to be less hard brawl compositions, which might be fun to play for sure, but are not fun to watch. More individual impact. So yeah, exactly. That's a big one right there. So less complaining about elo hell, right? You're going to feel your impact, more because it's like a little bit tricky because you could also argue that a bad player will hurt your team's performance more. But assuming that the matchmaking isn't complete dog, I think the statistics say that you're going to have you have more of an impact in each and every game. Renee, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, the tank thing is like when you have one tank. It depends how like important the tank becomes. If like the tank is just does the similar thing to a DPS, but he's just beefier, then you can kind of deal with a worse tank better rather than when like if one tank drags your other tank down. If you need a Zarya to bubble you properly to do anything, then you kind of even in a 6v6 you can have one person ruin it. But if it's kind of like the gap, like what tank does becomes more similar to what DPS does in terms of playing around angles and stuff, then maybe you see like that one Masters tank on your team being less of a problem, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe because you only have one tank, if you get the Masters tank, it's GG. So it could go both ways.
Yeah. But also at the same time, if you get the Masters tank, it's GG's. But also we're talking about like maybe tanks are like beefier, but also maybe not quite as impactful. So like who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think
it's hard to say. Like I think I'm curious to see how like if this ends up being that the one tank is like really really impactful, if they adjust matchmaking a little bit. Like maybe they have like for example 4.5 players and one Masters main tank, and you realize that holy cow, main tank or the one tank is a really really impactful role. So if we put even 4.5 players and one Masters player in a lobby, they're going to get rolled by 5 players that are like 4.1 or 4.2, because having a 4.2 tank is so much of an impact. So maybe we have like, I don't know how they do that, but adjust the matchmaking so that they understand that having a higher ranked tank is very, very, very impactful. Or vice versa. Maybe tank is like less impactful than it is right now. Although I think if that's the case, a lot of people will be very unhappy. One thing that was brought up in chat and I wanted your thought on was the impact of losing someone is massive now. Right. Yeah. So now obviously 5 versus 6, you don't generally win those in Overwatch. I think is it like 25% chance, 20% chance as opposed to 50. It's a big dip, right?
I think it's going up though.
You think so?
Yeah, I think kind of the same mentality that brought around like the angle control, less playing around, like just play on point. I think it's kind of been accompanied, at least for me. I don't know if it's that kind of just me going up in the kind of the rankings. Is that more things, I think Shock kind of started it, and like with Goats, where like the winnable mentality, where like you start ulting when you're down, you don't, you keep ulting, that kind of mentality. It might carry over so that I think it's brought up the 5v6 win percentage, but I think that will kind of fall down again in 5v5, just because right now you can win a 5v6 because if you lose someone in your kill box, you can still win. You still hit your combo, you can easily trade back more people. But I think if it becomes more kind of spread out, more scrappy, then losing one person, like, if they lose their 1v1, the Tracer 1v1 on one flank, suddenly you're not going to just insta-trade it somewhere else.
Right, exactly. It's not, it goes from being, okay, we're down 17% of our value, or 16.7 or whatever.
Yeah.
And now we're down 20% of our value, right?
It's more difficult to trade it, at least. I mean, maybe you can, put less resources on one flank and more on the other, and then you can trade 1-for-1 on like individually, but there's going to be less of like the whole team gives up one thing and then takes back 3 or whatever.
Right. Right. So 5 being at a mana advantage in a 5 versus 5 is way bigger of a deal.
Yeah, because I think you can grind it out. You know, that one DPS that is free or the one tank that's now uncontested. They'll think it'll make more of a difference.
Sure. Okay. Chat, do you guys have any? I'm gonna give you guys a couple of more seconds. Do you guys have anything? So I know there's a lot of like negative chat right now, and again, I understand. But do you guys have like trying to like get something positive, constructive out of this? Do you guys have any other positive spins or thoughts about this? Whether it's Overwatch League casual play. I mean, okay, let's be honest here. People are going to try it. I think that is one positive thing. It might not be a very big positive thing, but Overwatch has historically never been really scared of trying things and doing goofy things that maybe other games weren't really keen to do, for better or for worse. I think with this, people are going to be mad and angry, but they're going to try it. A lot of people are going to try it. I think more people would try it than it would be if nothing else was changed. So
I think so too.
If you're sure it's a good thing, if the Overwatch developers people are trash talking it, but they're going to love it. I just wish they would try it. They'll love it. Then this is really good. It's a high risk move, right? Because you're going to get a lot of people trying it, but you also have a chance to make a lot of people really mad.
I thought the same thing with like when they announced like, oh, Overwatch 2 is like years away, and a lot of people were like really mad about it. And I kind of the spin I took on it was I'd rather they like go all in on Overwatch 2 and like make it really different, make it really interesting, because that's what's going to get like, you know, XQC will play Overwatch 2. He's gonna have like 100k people watch him play Overwatch 2. Everyone will want to see that. So I think the more effort they put into making Overwatch 2 the best they can, rather than rushing it out like within a year, I think the better they stand for the longevity of the franchise. I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think like just the fact that people are talking about it right now. A lot of people are talking about it, and there's people say there's no such thing as bad publicity. People are going to try it. Like it's going to happen, and people are talking about it a lot more than they would if nothing would have been changed here. So it's ballsy. It's questionable, but we will see. Another one. What do you think about one of the comments in chat is maybe easier balancing? What are your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. What happened a lot was like people's concern is like, and someone mentioned it as well when you're like designing a tank. It happened with Sigma. People like Jeff said Sigma was a main tank, and he just wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, that was an oversight by the devs. It happens, whatever. When you have one tank, you don't have to think about what if you put this guy with that guy. You know, someone else mentioned if you go into a lobby right now in Overwatch, someone locks ball, you can't play Ryan anymore. You can't play, I don't know, I forgot something else now.
Yeah.
Orisa in some cases, right?
Right.
So now it's like you can pick one tank and it's like more workable because there's no tank synergy issues.
Right.
So you know now you have one tank to play around. You don't have like that one guy on the solo queue hog going around on his own with your ball on the other side of the map and stuff like that. So
yeah. So
I think once they've figured it out, they definitely have an easier time kind of giving each tank an identity.
Right. That makes sense. Makes sense. I think that identity is going to be the tricky part, though, because I've got Vulcan. Like, we can jump to negative for a split second, because Vulcan over with Odyssey, and he's saying balancing some of these off things is going to be really hard. And I agree. Like, I look at something like a Hog, Ball is going to be obviously Ball is very easy, self-sustained, great at map control. I mean, there's nothing to touch there. In fact, I think he might even need to be nerfed depending on how these things go through. But man, how do you balance a D.Va or a Zarya around that? Like, I think you saw the Zarya with some of the bubble charges, which gives her a little bit more flexibility, but she's still a very, very slow, low range tank. And that's a problem. D.Va does have mobility going for her, but she has basically no range whatsoever, and she's very easy to poke out. So I look at Hog and I'm like, he'll probably be okay. Sig probably be okay. Range doesn't get poked out very easily. Ball will be fine. But then I look at like D.Va and Zarya, and like we talked about already, Reinhardt. How are you going to do that? Because the way I look at it is like, to control the map and to play like more of these quote unquote deathmatchy, less brawly style, you need either mobility and range, excuse me. And I look at heroes like Zarya, right? She's got neither. And to a lesser extent, D.Va as well, who's mobile but not a lot of range. Do you think that could be as simple as like increasing her, decreasing her spread? Do you think it would be like reducing booster cooldown? Would it be like with Zarya, maybe increasing her HP a little bit to counter? Like, what do you think? Because it's gonna be hard, unquestionably.
So I think there's what might happen is that you have kind of like a massive split, and like the old main tanks are good on the old maps, and the off tanks are good on the new maps. Let's say it's like Volker's talking about front lines. If there is no front line, for example, let's say there's a map that for some reason has like, the Process side, there are two places on the map that we have to fight for at the same time. Something like Zarya, where you can bubble, say, both your engages at the same time, could be really good.
True.
Or like
True.
D.Va fighting on one place, and then instantly when you need to respond, get to the other side in time. And maybe main tanks can't contest that, and that's kind of like where those off tanks kind of find their strengths. Or a map that has 3 really good flanks. Maybe that's where Hog is really good because he can like solo take one of those flanks, and then one support goes with one DPS, whatever. So it could be that off tanks kind of find their footing in the more like chaotic, overwhelming kind of maps that are new, and it could be that they kind of try and merge everything and they try and make Rein more mobile and Monkey more mobile, towards kind of like multiple fights happening at once, and then they make the off tanks a bit more grounded. So I think they would either try and merge the tanks, or they will try and just they'll leave them relatively separate and expect to see different metas evolve around different map types. It could be both.
Right. Makes sense.
But what was kind of disappointing is that like outside of Zarya in the stream, they didn't really show any other changes like to the off tanks to like kind of indicate where they were trying to take it, which is a shame, I think. Because the Zarya thing with 2 bubbles gives her more flexibility. It's no longer I bubble myself to do one thing, I bubble my main tank to do one thing, and that's kind of like all you can do. Now it's like, okay, maybe the Zarya becomes like the key focus with 2 bubbles. Did D.Va have more DM? I don't know. I can't verify that.
So people said that it looked like she had more DM, but I don't.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, Sigma and Orisa are like quarantined as well. So in my eyes, the reason they say they're quarantining static things is that they're going to make them less static. That's my idea. Okay. So in theory, they're aiming for things to be able to cover more places in the map. So yeah, they said they gave me more DM. Okay.
See, I don't think more DM is necessarily the play for her though, because I don't think DM is the problem. I think it's like I mean, I don't know. I'm talking on my butt here. So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if DM can reach both fights at the same time, within like a reasonable distance, it's like crazy, and you can DM both duels at the same time. That could be really good.
Right.
I mean, the other thing to consider with tanks getting poked out is that there's also now 2 supports to heal 1 tank. So maybe that's less of an issue. That's something they mentioned a lot, is that you don't have the deal of healing 2 tanks anymore. There's a lot less demand for raw healing in the game.
Right. Which again, to me, is like that's good for tanks like Reinhardt. Maybe like, hey, I'm not completely inting, but that still says, hi, we're going to be playing more Brig Zen. Because like, why on earth did you play Moira with 1 tank? And not only is she bad at controlling angles, but she's like, so this might even be, this is less like, so I think this isn't not just about tanks putting this in, but also about heal oriented supports. Like BAP is going to be awful with this. BAP is going to be awful. Moira is going to be awful. Ana is going to be relatively weak. I think Brig Zen, Lucio is going to be terrible. I think literally to me, Brig Zen, Mercy, maybe Ana. I don't see any other reason to run any other support on any map that resembles anything that's open space at all.
They didn't actually touch Moira as far as I remember. No one played Moira, so perhaps some change is happening there. I saw them play BAP, so BAP's not quarantined just yet.
Yeah, but I think like BAP is going to be trash. Like half of your abilities are small area location.
For sure. I
mean, all of your abilities, and then obviously your healing as well.
Unless he becomes like very damage heavy,
right?
For example, you know that kind of like off angling BAP style.
True, exactly. I mean, he does have a ranged weapon. That is like how you.
Yeah, that's like his one thing. He has a gun and he has a window that could make him. That might make him stand out. And the lamp is incredible self-sustain.
Right. This isn't going to be just about 5v5. We'll talk about other things, guys. Why would Lucio be bad? Just because if there's like, it's not just because Brawl's bad, it's because Overwatch has always been about angles and map control, right? And Lucio has kind of fallen out of favor in any comp that's not hard Brawl, like, or Brawl variants, right? But when it's not just about the fact that, it's more like Brawl's bad, it's because that there's going to be less justification to stack. And so heroes that benefit from that stacking are going to be hurt.
Yeah, like just looking at the new maps, it doesn't look like you can just, do one rotation, your whole team speeds through the entire map and clears every high ground and you win. It's like if you clear one high ground, they can get behind you, they can go around, they can retake it.
Yeah.
So it kind of loses the justification for how many people is he actually helping to do their job.
Right. Exactly. And obviously, like, his lack of range is a big deal as well. It's not just the aura, it's the fact that he has a very, very slow, low damage projectile. That like he's not going to be getting value that other more range supports will provide. AoE healing is significantly nerfed. I mean, indirectly, absolutely. I mean, the other negative that we talked about is Overwatch League positions. I mean, we joked about it in a chat earlier, or not chat, but a TeamSpeak earlier. We're like, you know, they're just gonna be playing on Overwatch League is just gonna be on Overwatch 1. You know, we've been playing on last year it was like we were playing in different patches with contenders and trials, and Overwatch doesn't actually translate into Overwatch League. Like Overwatch League will forever be on Overwatch 1, so we don't need to worry about it. I mean, obviously this is going to impact Overwatch League. What are your thoughts on this? Because I assume that they're going to release another tank at some point as well. I don't know when, what, or where.
Yeah, it's like what 4 heroes they said for the new game, so presumably one is a tank,
of course,
which will probably be designed around Overwatch 2 kind of strengths.
Right. So I think, I mean, we've seen this. We've already kind of seen this in the game. Besides this, like for example, main supports used to play Lucio Mercy. Remember the whole idea of flex support was that name came from, oh, we have our Lucio support, and then our flex support will play Ana or Zen, right?
Yeah.
But so like, and that's where that's like that archaic terminology. But now you've got main supports that have to play Lucio, Mercy, and BAP, and Brig, right? And flex supports that have to play Moira and Zen and BAP and Ana.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have that, and then you have main tanks that have to play Ball, Winston, Orisa, Rhine. I mean, heck, we even had a Hog Zarya meta for a while. We had main tanks on
we had
Hog.
main tanks on Hog. We had off tanks on Ball.
Right. Yeah, off tanks on Ball, exactly. And we've had very, goofy counter strats with like Ryan Winston or Ryan Orisa, where you have main tanks on or off tanks on Ryan or Orisa or Monkey. Flex DPS has been the big one, right?
Like there's no projectile DPS isn't a thing.
Projectile DPS is dead. It's not just because projectile DPS's heroes are weak right now, but also because flanker comps are so strong, Sombras and Tracers and things like that. Like your flex DPS player at the Overwatch League high top contenders level, you have to play Tracer. You just have to. Like you can't not play Tracer. Another one is Sombra. Like everyone kind of has to have at least have an idea of what they're doing with Sombra. We see Hitscans playing Echo. We see flex DPS players picking up a little bit of McCree. I mean, we just looked
Hitscans on Hanzo.
Right, Hitscans on Hanzo. Exactly. That was exactly Symmetra as well. So like, there's across the board, everyone's kind of had to learn more and more heroes and kind of flex outside their role. So people are like bemoaning the fact about learning a lot of tanks, and I do think that's going to be difficult. I definitely think tanks play style and knowing your hero is a little trickier with tanks than it is with DPS, just because of like the play style adjustments. But I don't think it will be as bad as people are saying at the pro level. The main concern here is obviously that there's going to be half the number of jobs required. And I know some people were saying like, oh, well, it'll be okay because they'll need like 3 tanks to specialize in the different tanks. Bull crap. They will. I don't know any, like we've already seen the death of massive rosters in Overwatch League as it is. I mean, how many 12-man rosters do we have in Overwatch League right now? Like 2, something like that.
Probably like some crazy Chengdu thing or something.
And people are realizing this just doesn't work. Like teamwork is too important, synergy, building like camaraderie, and also they're just stupid expensive. So I think this is unquestionably, this is going to shrink rosters by a tank slot. I think we'll probably 2 tanks. I think that's probably fair, but you're not going to see 3 tanks on a team, I don't think, anymore. So yeah,
you'll probably have like the mainstay tank and then like the one guy is maybe like, I don't know, crazy Zarya for like the one map that Zarya's OP on or something.
He's great with the off tanks, and he can also play a decent ball or something like that, right? So like maps where maybe the off tank position is really good or hog ball is really good there, whatever. But so this is going to affect Overwatch League positions for sure. I think Jane posted that thing on Twitter that everyone's making fun of, like that was the main reason why this happened. I don't think that's accurate, but I do think that is something that it's going to have an impact on this for sure.
I mean, I think the other thing to remember is that there's kind of like a relative player shortage anyway. So I think, if there's like talented off tanks, like Fury's not going to lose his job. Fury will find a way to stay in the game. It might necessarily be like doing what he's historically known for, but he's so good, he'll find a way to stay in the game. And in the same way, I think, there's talent is drying up, within tier 2 and tier 3. So it's kind of like, spreading out 6 players into now 5-man rosters might not be the end of the world.
Right.
depending on how well skills translate and how much time they have to transition between
Right.
their owl job and then Overwatch 2 or whatever that does. with
Yeah.
Overwatch League.
I mean, I guess we just wait and see right now. I mean, it's definitely a nail in the coffin, especially with how like looking at these maps, like again, just like how different each point is from point to point to point. And considering, like, to me, this is also another, like, this is going to be another, you need to be flexible in DPS kind of a situation.
Yeah, especially because ults are way slower as well.
Okay.
So
I
like
didn't
because
know
tanks
that.
have a passive. So tanks have okay, so it's kind of like a byproduct, but they haven't changed like the ult values as far as they said. But because you don't have 2 tanks to farm off of, and tanks have a passive that reduces the ult charge they give from taking damage,
Oh.
the ult economy in general in the game is like way slower.
Oh, gosh. That's actually
So
pretty
that-
big. Now, wait a second.
So that
They
affects like how much you switch and stuff between points.
did this before, though, didn't they?
They did slow it down globally by like what was
But
it, 10% in goats?
didn't people say that that ironically meant that people were less likely to swap because they'd already we took it? I'm not going to build another ultimate before this map is over.
Yeah, so I don't know what impact it will have, but it will definitely change how people approach the maps. Whether
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's
So-
also interesting because I think some of these ultimates might also need to be not reworked, but like looked at again because
Yeah, like what does Blizzard do?
like what is Blizzard gonna? What is honestly like another thing is like Bob won't be. I mean Bob I guess for point pressure, but Bob is another one. Like there's just it's gonna be a lot easier to LOS around Bob, but Blizzard for sure. Sound barrier is gonna be atrocious. I'm trying to think what else here. Diva Bomb is gonna be less impactful for sure, a lot less impactful. Graviton will be harder to get consistent value out of. I mean, people will be like, solo grabs that'll be all you get. You
So
get solo grabs.
like the norm.
Whole hog probably going to be a lot weaker as well. Just a lot of different things that I think across the board will be interesting. I don't think ultimates being a slightly weaker is a bad thing though. I think that's something that we've seen with the game is like some ult driven metas can be a little sleeper.
When it's like the odds are up every single fight, it's just what the fight plan's going to be every time. So it definitely makes things more dynamic.
Yep. Okay, so Overwatch League positions. Chat, what are your thoughts on negatives? I'm gonna open up the floor to you guys. Try and keep them succinct, because if you guys make a point, I'm gonna talk about it a little bit, so I won't be able to catch everything. Supports will be under more pressure, potentially. On retake.
It's kind of two sides to it because you have fewer people to heal.
Yeah.
But you have fewer people helping you, and there's more people on you because of the flanks. So it's less like you can sit in that one super safe backline spot in your spawn and no one can touch you. So it's definitely going to be more. I think support's going to have to do a lot more kind of like fighting and less healing, I think.
One thing, and I saw Super's tweet was about losing that tank synergy, right? The Orisa Hog, the Ryan Zarya, the Winston Diva, the Winston Zarya, the Ball Zarya. That is one of the more satisfying aspects of Overwatch for sure. What are your thoughts on that? Because obviously that hits close to home for you.
Yeah, I think it's a shame. It's a shame to lose it. It'll be it's a nostalgia thing as well. But I suppose we'll have to find a way to kind of move on with it. There'll be other things that pop up. Eventually, we'll find some. There'll probably be more tank DPS synergy, for example. If there's like fighting on a flank with a DPS or whatever, there'll be more of that, and we'll find something else. It's a shame, but it's kind of how it is.
Yeah. I mean,
another point in chat that was made as well is that supports have a passive now that they all have self heal. They have regen, like Mercy does.
Yep.
It's not a ton, but it's like 10 HPS after a few seconds.
Right. Which is something. So it's like the Zenyatta, like the Zenyatta or Mercy self heal.
Yeah.
For Zenyatta, it's the shields, but yeah, it's the same kind of idea. Okay, that's interesting. That's gonna make it easier. I do feel like I wonder if we see. I'm just thinking about like the
DPS faster. Yeah.
Yeah. DPS move faster as well.
Yeah, so they all have like higher base moves.
Wait, Tracer as well. Because Tracer and Genji were already, I think, what?
They already do. I don't know if. Yeah. But not
like
every
that.
DPS is ahead, and I presume Tracer Genji even further.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so I guess positives is there are positive here. There's a couple of like mitigating circumstances or mitigating choices they're making. Like they are looking at static tanks. They are giving supports a slight passive heal. Maybe they are like keeping up with the times in terms of like the overall macro understanding of the game. in terms of like less brawl, less visual clutter, queue time, more individual impact. People are going to try it from just like a business standpoint and potentially easier balancing, because there's fewer variables on the table. That's my take anyway. Who knows? Negatives, like there's like, I mean, honestly, like I put Ryan's shortcomings here, but just like the cast's hero shortcomings. Because like we talked about, it's not just May's Blizzard, but May Wall. What a useless ability, right? Freeze. I know we talked about like, well, I think they removed Freeze, but like again, that's going to be a lot weaker. Ryan Shield, a lot weaker. Things like Junkrat Trap. Like, are you joking? Like what does that actually do? So there's just going to be so many heroes, I think, depending on the creation and structure of these maps that have the potential. Now, again, I'm ignorant on this. I haven't played the maps. I don't know how many open maps that there are, but I think there are a lot of abilities and heroes that are going to need to be like readjusted and looked at. So
that's what I think was kind of lacking, is that they kind of showed this. They had this showcase. A few heroes were different that they kind of played a lot of, and then the rest of them kind of left something to be designed. And it's like, it'd be easier to tell what, you know, if we think the direction is good, if we see like a bigger kind of quantity of how many different heroes they have, like where are they taking it? Is Junkrat gonna have, I don't know, 10 traps, or is he just gonna have a different balancing philosophy?
What do they say? Like a little bit of information is a dangerous thing, or something like that. I feel like we're given a little bit of information and we're like, but oh no, like it's dead. All these other heroes suck. Like it's over now. Like where it would have been almost better to just like not show a little bit, but like we don't.
Yeah, it's kind of like an awkward middle ground where they want to show where they're going with it, but we don't know like how far they're going to take it.
Right.
Because they say that, you know, they're actively looking at all the heroes and they're going to rethink things and stuff like that.
Yeah, somebody in chat says junk 10 traps, please. Yeah, exactly. Just like your trap now is like has like BAP lamp arc. You could just throw it all over the map, you know?
I come back and I hear talk about.
Hey Prime, thanks for the sub, mate.
Continue, please.
Jeez, yeah. But yeah, the hero shortcomings, those need to be addressed for sure. Picks are more significant, so there's more individual impact, but there's also like, hey, if we lose somebody, it's just over, right? Like that's going to be tilting. Playing into a Widow is tilting as it is, but it's going to be tilting. Oh, the Widow got a pick. Okay, well that's another team fight over. Balancing tanks is going to be really hard, a lot more so than a lot of the DPS and supports. But also, like we talked about the supports as well, like the specific supports without range, like the Moira's, the heal bot supports. I mean, to be honest, I think Moira is a joke anyway, and I think that that's something that they needed to look at with some of the support balances, like how they control the map and things like that. But Overwatch League positions, you know, somebody's going to be losing their job for that for sure, and then losing that tank synergy, something that's a signature Overwatch like class. The Ryan's are the Winston Diva, those kind of things is going to lose. Chad, are there any last thoughts that you'd like to see discussed on this before we move on to talk about more? Because there was a lot more that came up here, and I'm not fully aware of that. So, one tank player puts way too much responsibility in one person, right? It just depends on like how much impact does this tank actually have, right? Overwatch tanks have less knockback too, as in they get
passive.
So
you know, like the Ryan passive.
Yeah. Okay,
they all have that. Yeah,
makes sense.
And the other thing is that they're experimenting with globally reducing movement acceleration.
Okay, so here's a thought: reducing time to kill. So one of the things that got me into Overwatch was the respawns and how there are one-shot heroes and the time to kill can be very fast if you're sloppy. But it wasn't like respawn, I get shot and I die instantly. It was like, okay, these team fights are kind of taking some time. We're trading resources. I'm getting my serotonin input from shooting the enemy off tank and shooting the enemy main tank. You know, with this, it does feel as if there's not maybe the pace of the game isn't going to be faster, but it definitely feels like once health or HP trades start to happen, that there's a potential of things going wrong really fast. You kind
things could collapse very quickly. Yeah.
So like I do see that as a negative for my choice, right? There's a reason, like I said, I didn't get into CS:GO. I didn't get into the Valorant because I'm not there to hold a corner for 15 minutes, right? And then so I want to be able to like have a more fluid play style where like, yeah, I get punished for mistakes, but the actual engagements aren't just over and done with. So what do you think? Do you think that this is going to affect the length of those engagements or what?
I think with 5 people, then you're going to kind of reach those breakpoints where fights don't get sustained more. But I think the way the maps are built it means that there are going to be more fights because the spawns are closer in terms of like the shortcuts, the way the kind of the payloads kind of like loop around and stuff, kind of give it that same feel.
Huh. That's a
So-
take. Yeah, I haven't thought of that.
So I think with the quicker fights and the more angles controlled, but also the fact that they've made more fightable areas on the maps, like fewer of those like key power positions, we
Mhm.
might see kind of more variety in where the fights happen, and maybe
Mhm.
even if the fights are a bit quicker, they at least happen in more different places, so we don't just get the same. You know, you're scrimming the 10th time this week, and you're playing Anubis for the 15th time this week, and
Right.
yay, you get to hold first point and do the same old.
All right, so,
So there might be kind of more variety, at least for the start.
more variety. There are going to be more fights. It's going to be less of like, this is a set way to hold Anubis, and if you mess it up, that's just it, right? There's going to be
Yeah,
multiple fights and multiple different situations. So,
Especially in push, for sure, it'll be very different.
okay. Do you think the current maps are too big for 10 people? I mean, Renee, you watched a lot more than I did, so.
They talked about it, so they said that it still felt fine on the 5v5 with the old maps. I don't know how much they changed them or how much they plan to change them, but I think it'll be okay.
Okay. Yeah, so to me, I look at this and I'm like, you either dive or spam. Because people are saying like, oh, people are just going to go dive and kill you. Yeah, but if spam has a really long sightline, good luck trying to stage a monkey or even a ball into that unless they have like some form of cover, because they're just going to get spammed like instantly one shot over and over and over again. Like you have to actually win the flank, win the sightline. There's a reason you don't play Genji, Sombra, and Winston on Junkertown first. Just because they're playing Widow doesn't mean you insta win with that. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Okay. So what else happened here? Because we talked a lot about 5v5, but what else was like, I guess, interesting on the board in terms of like what they actually discussed or released?
A lot of new maps. They look design-wise, they look really nice. They look really pretty. They're definitely putting a lot of effort into like kind of overhauling the appearance of the game.
Okay. Now, what do you mean overhaul? Like just like clean or updated? Because to be honest, like I don't know if this is just the first rendition. It looked a little more cartoony than I'm used to.
Yeah, it looks a bit more.
Was that just?
I think
because...
the UI is kind of like early stage. At least the UI is a bit more boxy and stuff. I don't like it. I don't think a lot of people like the UI. I expect it to change.
Yeah, I hope it changes. I did not like the UI. I was like,
they've changed the sounds.
Like a mobile game or like what's going on?
Yeah.
Like okay. So cool designs, new maps, UI early stages. What else did we have to worry about? Oh, gun sounds. Like
gun sounds. I think Overwatch has always had really good gun sounds. So I and sound design in general in Overwatch is brilliant. So I have no concerns about that. I think by the end of it, it'll be fine.
Okay.
Like I have like an 8-year-old HyperX Cloud 2 headset, and I can literally hear everything on the map. Like I'm so used to it. The sounds are brilliant in Overwatch. So I have no concerns about that.
Okay, slower movement acceleration. What's going on with that? Because with
So
Overwatch,
I don't know how much. I don't know how much CS:GO you've played.
I mean, here's what I do know. I know Overwatch you can stop on the dime, which makes it really hard to shoot. It's like I think what is the hardest
the bigger
game?
Hitboxes.
Hardest game in the world to aim in. I think
it's like that in Fortnite.
Right. And what slower movement accelerate? Does that mean that there's going to be some movement conservation?
Yeah, so it takes longer to speed up and change direction.
So in other words, the 80-80 strafing, instead of like looking like this, like it'll be like
so 80-80 is harder. Yeah,
like there's going to be like the periods of like
it's subtle. Yeah, they said it's subtle, but it will definitely it'll help on those like kind of edge cases.
Interesting. Now, why do you think they would do that?
They said there's a lot of debate around it, so I think that's something that's still subject to change. But I presume it's to perhaps compensate for the fact that there's a lot more kind of DPS dueling happening on flanks. That becomes more of an issue. Like let's say maybe supports have an easier time defending themselves from like crazy strafing DPS if there's more of that. Or
interesting.
Yeah, so maybe just because that's happening more that something became more of a concern. So in a sense, it's a bit of a hit scan buff.
That's fair.
But actually, no. It might. It's a buff to all damage in a sense because it means that you can lead projectiles better.
Right. It's odd. I'm not sure what I think about it, but I'd have to actually try it. And as long as you said it's subtle, I think it will be interesting to see. Okay, so what else did we get besides like before because I'm hearing a lot of like individual hero stuff, and I would love to go over that individually. But before we do that, is there anything like overarching that we saw?
I'm looking through my notes because we kind of covered a lot of it. That's kind of it, really. They were pretty slow with the stream.
Okay.
They basically just, a lot of them, like 60% of the stream was them just watching like a gold lobby play 5v5 and kind of like vaguely talking
CC.
over it.
CC.
CC,
What's the deal
yes.
with CC?
So they said that the overall mentality with CC was to decrease it on DPS and supports, outside of skill shot type stuff like Ana. So they mentioned Flashbang as a thing that they are looking at removing. They didn't mention Brig, but there wasn't any Brig being played, so I presume they're addressing Brig in the CC side. But I think they said that they wanted to keep Sleep Dart for the moment. Because they see that as like a skill shot, it's rewarding.
Sure.
It feels, you know, when you get slept, it feels fair.
Yeah.
They hit their shot fine.
More so than
and it's a long
most
CC.
CCs anyway, for sure. Yeah.
I think they played Sombra. Sombra was being played, but I definitely expect Hack to get worked on. I saw Vulcan talk about it being a solo tank versus Hack will be a nightmare.
True. I mean, Sombra is just an awfully designed hero. Thank you for the sub, by the way, Kipo. I mean, Moira is an awfully designed hero. I think Sombra is also like her ability is literally, oh, you can no longer use your abilities. And I get like it's a cool little hero design, it's a cute little thing, but like in functionality, there's nothing ever rewarding about Sombra whatsoever. And it's not even like she's an easy hero to play. Like when
I think Sombra has one of the highest skill ceilings.
Right, exactly. She's the fact that you have such a high skill ceiling hero, and yet people hate playing against her so much. That's a red flag. That's because people hate Moira, people hate Junkrat because they're easy to play, right? Obviously, like okay, that's just how it
like
is.
Hog as well.
Right, Hog as well. Very, very one-dimensional heroes, but like Sombra, like I feel like I should be respecting Sombra players more, but I don't.
Yeah, because there were such good Sombra players. Like I remember like Ding in like season 3 Owl, or like when Goats was ending as well.
Right.
He was fantastic at what he did, and I think Sombra's really fun. Like her gun play is really fun. I like it.
It sounds amazing.
But then it kind of just gets ruined because you can play perfectly on Sombra and people won't respect it because they're like, oh, you're playing Sombra, fuck you.
Right.
So like, yeah. I think that's something they should look at retooling for sure.
For sure. Because I think the stealth mechanic is cool. I think the translocator mechanic is cool. I mean, maybe I don't even know. Maybe you could make Hack. I honestly don't know. There's been other better people, smarter people than me that have offered suggestions. I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. Do I think Brig is poorly designed? I think Brig at release was busted, but I think Brig right now actually functions pretty well in her niche. Brig is actually pretty well balanced right now, in my opinion.
I think she just fits the kind of overarching philosophy of the game at the moment. That's why she sees a lot of play.
Exactly.
It's one of those heroes where like she got played so much when she was busted that people got really, really, really good at using her. In the same way when Sigma, if you put current live Sigma out at launch, he'd be terrible. No one would ever play him. He'd be awful forever. Because people would not put in like the 50, 100, 200 hours that they needed to get to the level where they were dominating on Sigma.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that. Has there ever been, at least since I've played the game, I don't know that there's ever been a weak unreleased hero. I mean, maybe
Orisa.
Orisa.
Ball and Orisa took a while. They took like 6 months and then they blew up.
For sure. Ball for sure was probably the weakest one that I've seen. But I wasn't even playing around Orisa.
Ash also didn't get played for a while.
Yeah. Ash,
but then again, they had
Ash as well. Ash was also.
It was the same thing where they got like sleeper buffed, and then people realized they were really good at this thing. Same with Ana in a sense when she got released.
Yeah.
And then people got so good at using Ash and Ana in this kind of specific playstyle that then when they got like nerfed 3 or 4 times, they still get played.
Yep. Yeah.
Because people got so good at using them, and they in a sense like these heroes like Ball, Ash, Brig, the new Brig at least, they kind of all the very big players in the kind of philosophy that kind of surrounds Overwatch at the moment.
Chat saying Ash was thrown into a Goats meta as well. That's a really good point.
Yeah, Ash was thrown, but it was like, I think it was kind of like, oh, she has a dynamite. It must be great against Goats. It's splash damage, and it was eventually good against Goats, but it took a while.
Yeah, it took a long time. Her gun, like that, she needed a reload or whatever, had motor bullets or whatever adjustments they had to make. But yeah. Okay, so decrease CC and supports and DPS. I think that's interesting. People were talking about passives. Is that a thing with this as well, or like additional?
Yeah, so that was the thing with like all tanks have knockback reduction, all DPS have movement speed, all supports have regen. That was the passive.
So now I'm thinking like MMO kind of a thing where they get like, oh, Genji has like a triple jump now or something like that. But no, okay,
I haven't heard any hero specific passives.
Okay. All right, so this is where I want to open up. I'm going to use chat's massive brain. Chat, did we have specific hero buffs, nerfs, new abilities, etc., and what were they? And then I want to talk with you about like what they meant. Ultimate charge reduction against them, right? So
yeah, that's the other tank passive.
Ultimate charge passives movement speed, bolt charge, boop, and then heal passive with supports. That's pretty interesting. Okay, so let's just stop with the Reinhardt. We'll start with Reinhardt. Reinhardt 2 fire strikes. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me.
Yep.
It's the one ranged ability that he has. I believe his shield was reduced as well.
Yeah, they're trying to reduce emphasis on shields, but they,
Right.
obviously the fire strike. I think again,
Right.
I don't know how much impact it has. Like a Rhine fire striking cross map isn't like the biggest concern in the world, but at least gives him a chance to interact a bit more
Right,
at a distance.
Right, exactly. Which is
So
like we
500
talk about
shield,
mobility and range. I think are going to be the key here if you're going to have a
And-
solo tank.
Also, Ryan has the cancelable charge, and it's kind of like a little bit like the experimental, where it's more turnable, so he can kind of access tighter corners and make more out of his charge.
So again, more mobility. So we're literally getting
Yeah.
both mobility and range. So that's what we wanted. Okay. What else do we got here? Let me scroll up a little
So,
bit. Winston.
Monkey has a right click now, and it's like a laser. It's like a sim. They're kind of like a sim right click where you charge it up, and then it's like a kind of like straight fire laser, like a kind of like hit scan beam kind of thing.
Like charge sim orb or charge sim zoom? Like
Yeah, so
beam?
it's like it has the same like mechanics as sim where you have to hold it down before it fires, but it's like a railgun.
Is it like a Spartan laser from like Halo or something? Am I thinking of that right? Like where you charge it up and then zoom, it like hits straight
Yeah.
line. Okay,
It's that
yes.
kind of thing. Yes.
Okay, and what does that do? How much damage? Anything that we should know about that?
I didn't get a good catch of it on stream. It's probably my ballpark guess would be about 80 damage for a hit.
Okay.
So I guess because what they said is that he can do it while he's jumping. So I guess that they're kind of trying to add that into his kind of burst combo.
Okay.
I didn't really get a clear look
Any
at it.
good
if you could see,
guesses
like, a
from
health bar.
chat? So 80 damage. What do you guys think?
I'm gonna guess it doesn't headshot. I think if you really looked carefully at the VOD, you could probably find it, but it was kind
Sure,
of a bit cluttered.
Sure, yeah, that's fine. I just want to get like, do we get an idea of like about how much? Seem about 60, 80. Seem pretty low damage. I mean, good. I feel like fairly
Yeah,
low
I
damage.
think the idea is that it's kind of like just an extra thing to give him, so that when to finish people, if they get like a last second blink or something, that's gonna be like the first use of it. That's what they mentioned
Sure.
is that when people slip out and you don't want to like then use your jump to chase and then feed.
Right. Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. So you go in, you land, you zap, zap, zap. They chase outside a bubble, and you can finish them off as they escape. Or if it's an immobile target, you can utilize your beam on
engage
entry,
midair.
right?
Yes.
And then landing damage plus zap. I mean, there's your Winston
Melee
one shot
and
combo. That's
your
an
one
actual-
shot combo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Maybe he also passes through shield and people. Who knows? Okay. I don't have much water left. Sorry, guys. Hang on. So that's interesting. Again, it kind of fits like what we're looking at here. Like I don't think we're going to see tanks with more HP. I mean, Ryan did have 550, but I don't think it's like significant. I think it's going to be more about the more range, more mobility. This is range, right?
Yeah.
This is the range.
More
Okay.
more kind of presence in the map.
Right, exactly. Okay, so what was the deal with May?
The Maze M1 no longer freezes, but does more damage. Still cleaves.
Does more damage. And
So
still
Blizzard
cleaves.
still freezes. It looked similar in terms of size and everything, but it just slows now. So I guess the idea of it is that because May is no longer going to be able to just run around the one choke in the map and freeze the one target that everyone's on. They've kind of, I guess, yes, the ult still freezes. But I guess it's going to be more of like if you're 2v2 and you can cleave both of them with the left click and slow them down, and then suddenly your Ashe has 3 headshots or whatever, that's kind of probably what they're going for.
Makes
So rather
sense.
than May kind of being like a 1v1 monster or like a team fight main tank killing monster, it's going to be more like a
Interesting.
on the side thing.
I
I'm
mean,
not sure how much it would do if like Wall doesn't get changed and Blizzard doesn't get changed, but it's definitely kind of in that direction.
Right. I mean, it makes it a lot more or less frustrating to play against, but it doesn't really fit our archetype of like, doesn't give her more range, doesn't give her more mobility, and I think she is going to be. This is a straight up nerf, because it does more damage. Yeah, but that's not why you're mouse wanting. So like, I would be interested to see what they do with her, because from what we're seeing from the map, she looks like she'd be a terrible DPS pick for like this whole meta, the way this whole thing is moving. So like, I think May is going to see more work.
Yeah, I think so too.
This is awkward. That's just I'm glad. Like screw May. I don't like that she's just an.
I think it's a
really
positive
annoying
change,
hero.
but she'd need to see more kind of
Right.
kind of integrate with that to make her work.
Right. My inside is saying yes, but my outside is like no. I mean, it's not really fair. Like the hero needs to be viable, and she's not going to be viable if this is all that gets touched on her, in my opinion.
Perhaps they make something happen with Wall that
maybe.
she can be more mobile with it.
Maybe that would be interesting. She,
I don't
if she
fucking know.
walls
Maybe give her
herself,
like a
she launches herself in the air.
yeah, like make it like a slide out of the ice or something, or like make the floor slipperier so she can kind of like, set up like a way to traverse between flanks faster,
Yeah.
something like that.
All
Could
right.
make it more,
All right.
she could close distance and then, freeze and get, punish people, stuff like that.
Sure. Chat, any other changes that we saw? So we saw Ryan, Winston, May. Any other heroes?
Zarya double bubble.
Oh, yeah, Zarya double bubble. I'll just say bubble selection, because I did see this one. So basically, Zarya could be, I bubble what I want.
Yes.
I can double bubble myself if I need it. I think the interesting thing that you said earlier, which made me feel a little more optimistic for Zarya, was you can bubble 2 flanks now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not like if you're like, hey, I can't contribute, I'm stupid, and I have like a 5-meter radius range, but at least I could bubble my Tracer and I can bubble my Ball, right? Or I can bubble my Widow and I can bubble my Ashe, right? I mean, that's definitely something. That's flexibility.
And something Connor mentioned earlier was that you could maybe see the return of like Zarya Doomfist, like the China thing.
Yeah.
With Doom,
true.
yeah, like so you're kind of forced to have a main tank again.
Yeah.
With Zarya, and you can double bubble the Doomfist.
All I can think
instead.
is how cancer it would be to have like a Tracer or a Doomfist in your backline with 2 bubbles.
It would be
my
horrible.
gosh, that would be awful. That would be absolutely atrocious. I don't know what you do at that point. I think you find a new game. That would be terrible. Okay. But it's definitely interesting, like you being able to like choose what you do want to do with your bubble, and more brawl-oriented maps. That also means that your Zarya can play a lot more aggressive than she would otherwise. I still don't know that you'd play Zarya as a main tank or as a tank, I guess now, in a more brawl-oriented map. But it does definitely give her some more options. I hope I didn't like just spark. There's some like Overwatch 2 dev that's like, oh, that's a great idea. Double bubble for Tracer. Let's go do that. Okay. Any other changes that you guys in chat that Renee, or anything off the top of your head? I want to see if chat can remember any.
They tinkered with overheals, overhealth.
Okay. Oh, really quick.
So-
Diva DM duration as well.
Yeah.
Forgot that one. I mean, I kind of was already said I was skeptical of this one a little bit.
So yeah, so I think they've changed overshields now to be kind of like one unified thing. It's like a green health bar now. So like Lucy ult gives you green HP, Doom ult gives him green HP.
Oh.
So they kind of just merged all of that because it was kind of misleading where like Lucio beat is blue, but it's not, doesn't do the same as the blue health bar that Zen has, and then it's all kind of a bit all over the place.
Right.
So they kind of merged that kind of overheal into kind of one simple thing.
Right. And overshields are the stuff that you can actually build ult charge off of. In other words, you can kill a Doomfist with 400 HP and you get that extra 150% or extra 150
Seems like
ult
it.
charge.
Yeah.
Same thing with
So
Soundwave as well.
that could be enough to I don't know if
Wait, Ball
over
Shield
armor
2?
gives.
Because Ball Shield doesn't give ult charge.
Yeah, that could be a thing because they were talking about Ball being very oppressive if
Oh, so maybe Ball...
DPS didn't have CC. So
Right. So the idea is that like, okay, that would be weird. Okay, interesting.
in Ball in general, his E will be a lot weaker because it's gonna be very hard to get like fat E's like above like 2 or 3 people.
That's true. The adaptive shield is going to be slightly weaker. I mean, that's one aspect of his kit. It's going to be weaker anyway. I mean, mine's as well. Interesting. Okay. What are your thoughts on Diva DM duration? Because there's your alliteration. Diva DM duration. I mean, it doesn't really match our like archetype of like more range, more mobility. It's kind of more like sustained. Like it's the equivalent of having more HP.
Yeah, effectively, she'll be able to do whatever she's doing for longer, but it's not going to radically change what she's capable of.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be like, hey, if I was there, or if I could reach that, I could help.
Yeah.
And I'm.
If DM was longer or boosters was faster or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to be game changing, but it's a sort of thing where like maybe it will make like Diva just about good enough in like one place, or like then you take it away, but it's fine.
All right. I think what it could do is that like, I mean, we actually had this conversation yesterday on stream about like people were asking like why is Brig played in Brawl, and we talked about like how like, oh, it's about you can pack your DPS and rally is pretty strong, but the thing that people don't understand is that like you can put Brig on a location, on a high ground, on a flank, and that flank is now contested, heavily contested. It's very difficult to dislodge the Brig from that location, from that high ground, so that map control allows your DPS to play in locations that they couldn't otherwise, and denies the enemy team from playing in those locations, or at
She
least
can
slows them down.
simultaneously play on the other side of the map with her armor packs, and that's
Right,
what
exactly.
makes her.
So maybe
Yeah.
with D.Va in this situation here, like she lacks that range of the armor packs that you just mentioned, but you can put her on this high ground, and I'm going to be an absolute pain in the
Yeah.
neck to get rid of because
And
I have
depending
that
on the
extra
map, she
duration.
might be able to contribute. I think on maps where all the fighting happens within one booster range of like her central position, she'll be good there.
Yeah, for sure, especially with maps with a lot of high ground, obviously, where those high grounds are valuable.
And something else I was thinking about is that in general, the off tanks as they are now are pretty good like matchups 1v1 into main tanks. So like
yeah, for sure.
solo D.Va into solo Monkey, if it's very chaotic, she will have a very good time, bullying the Monkey out of positions and
Right.
booping his engaged or whatever. So if you have a situation where it's very angle heavy and it's very controlled, not much diving happening, the D.Va might be better than the solo Monkey, just because she can.
For sure.
If she mirrors that Monkey, the Monkey's screwed.
I think Solo Monkey might actually be pretty bad. Like Solo Monkey is not good, in most situations because he's kind of he's kind of like he is mobile, but he bleeds a lot of ult charge and he's low in the armor count as well. Like I think Monkey might be a hero that might actually need more buffs than what they gave him. He might need 50 more armor. He might need a slightly lower jump cooldown or something like that. Maybe cut his bubble HP in half and have his jump or something like that. Or I mean that would probably be too much, but like something like that to give him more options. Yeah, that actually.
Yeah, so now he has that one shot potential instead. So it's kind of maybe like a a tug of war between the D.Va and the Monkey to slip through and get his one shot off or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to consider is that support ult charge will now be faster comparatively because they don't get affected as much by the ult reduction. So if all the DPS and tanks are farming their ult slower because they're not doing as much damage, but then the supports are still healing
Wouldn't
more
it be the
because there's no
opposite?
reduction. Just because of the reduction thing. Yeah, so the supports will also be slower because there'll be less damage going around, but they don't have the problem of not shooting tanks.
Because the idea is that it's like, if I'm going to draw this up, it's like 6 members of the enemy team are attacking, like the 6 members of the friendly team, right? And all of that damage, the ult charge is basically benefited by 2 people, right?
Yeah.
So if you remove one of the people, like if we cross off, like, where's my yellow here? We'll cross off this here, and cross off this here, and you still have 5 people doing damage here, right? Especially there's one less tank to farm, right? Which is definitely impactful for support ult charge, but it's still these 2 people getting all the ult charge of what the other 5 are doing.
And because the enemy is getting less ult charge for shooting that your tank, I think it will mean that supports will be slightly faster at getting ults.
I think so. I mean, they'll be slower than they are now, but slightly.
Yeah, everything will be slower, but supports less.
Proportionally, it should be a slightly faster than their tanks and DPS. Like for example, can you imagine how long it's gonna take a Reinhardt to build an Earthshatter?
Oh, forever. He's not
or Graviton. Like holy smokes. Movement acceleration, does that lower the movement skill ceiling? I mean,
not sure. I guess so.
Potentially, like, remember when we talked about this? You weren't here, but I did this in chat. We did this with SVB, where we went over like each role, and we did a skill floor, skill ceiling, value floor, value ceiling, and how we differentiated between skill ceiling and value ceiling is in there's a potential ceiling here, but the amount of value you get from getting there is worse. So I think the skill ceiling might be relatively unchanged, but the value you get out of min-maxing your 80-80 might not be as much of a payoff because the enemy team will be hitting more shots. So it's like you're not really rewarded for min-maxing your 80-80.
The floor might be a bit higher though. Just because you can't just like brain dead smash it and you'll still like jiggle. Now that you accelerate, you might have to be smarter with like the timing on it and how you get in people's heads and stuff.
Right, to be actually competent at like strafing, it's going to take some effort now.
Yeah, you need to consider like how fast you turn. It's not like a huge change, but I think it might push up just a little bit. You need to be a bit smarter with how you do it. You can't just brainlessly spam 80-80 and you're especially because so many of the heroes like lean when they change direction, and that like kind of puts like already makes it fairly easy.
I missed this. I didn't really think about this. Tank passive reduces the ult charge you get from damaging them. So in other words,
that's what I was talking about when
how
I
much
said
do we know how much this is? Like we talked this up, but I didn't think about it.
It's on the stream about an hour in, I think. There's a tracer shooting a hog.
Help me, chat, help me. Somebody.
It looked like a good amount, like half. Yeah.
Like half?
It's on the stream somewhere. I'll try and find a timestamp. But she's shooting a hog in like Blizzard World, like on her own, and they're talking about. So you can probably schedule yourself. but it's like it's significant.
That's massive because the whole point. Okay. Well, there's your tank buff. Because now we talk about like, I mean, the kill is a kill, right? But being able to we talk about like the diva holding high ground.
That's what I was saying.
There's just no.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that's a lot like the longer DM and
she has two supports healing her now.
Yeah,
so
it's
less things to worry about.
That's very discouraging to be shooting that and be getting 50% return on investment for that.
And then the supports are going to get all of the ult charge from healing them back as well. So you give them a lot more than you gain.
Right now,
so
again,
that kind of...
I remind chat, a kill is a kill, right? A kill in tank is just as valuable, if not more valuable, than killing a DPS or support. So if you can guarantee the kill, but just mindlessly spamming to just build an ultimate, that's not as big of a you're not just gonna be able to just farm the one tank anymore. Tracer got 20% ult charge from shooting 2 clips into a hog.
If you go to 110 in the VOD, it's there.
110, okay.
Maybe my VOD is different to yours.
Like an hour and 10 minutes, right?
Yeah. Are you on the Overwatch League one?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Oh, they're going. Yeah, here you are.
1 hour, 10 seconds, 14.
Yeah.
So in this case, you can see tanks have a couple things.
So the first one's live, and the other one is so that's on live. So 20 for one clip.
Yeah, so it's half.
And now 11 for a clip. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically
So
half. Wow, interesting.
That makes Hog a lot better.
Yeah, that makes Hog a lot better. That makes Hog a heck of a lot better because that was the big reason why you don't play him is because you're just gonna bleed ult charge, you know. Wow, yeah, that makes Hog a lot better. I mean, it kills a kill.
Diva's range issues.
Yeah.
Change a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you could very, very realistically I'm thinking about what would be good. Like you could run Hog, Tracer, Sombra, Brig, Zen, or something like that. I don't know.
But in general, again, the change kind of pushes the game in the direction of doing things more purposefully.
Yeah.
That kind of same intention with, now we're making you fight for more angles on the map and think about where you're playing more. Again, it pushes in the direction of less mindless spamming into chokes, more doing something with your abilities and, making considerable gains, not just getting ult charge.
Yeah. I tell you what, it's going to be a shock to a lot of bronze and gold players who are going to realize, hey, we can't just stack behind a shield and walk through a choke, and that's not going to work anymore. I think
it's a good thing.
I do. I think people are gonna have to realize about how flanking and holding angles. I feel like the Overwatch is in this little bubble when it comes to comparison to other FPSs where they don't even think about flanking and they don't even think about this until they hit to Platinum Diamond. It's
not even then. I play in Platinum Diamond all the time. Flanking is a mystery to them.
Yeah. Oh, you're feeding. We need to group up, guys. And that's no. It's ironic because I was saying this the other day. Is how in lower ranks, it's ironic that those guys group up the most, yet they complain about the lack of grouping up the most. I mean, I guess it makes sense because it's more important to them, so they're more likely to call it out when they see it. But I mean, it just doesn't happen, and that's just not how the game's supposed to be played. So I think maybe removing this tank kind of pushes people in that direction. But I would like to see, I mean, this is a completely other can of worms and I don't want to go down this road too much, but I mean, I had to figure this out on my own, right? And I feel like that's the case for a lot of people. And if you look at a lot of Overwatch educational content, especially stuff that's older than I guess the last 6 months, they just don't talk about this. If you look at VOD reviews and if you look at educational content from some content creators who I won't name, big ones, right? They don't talk about that. It's all group up. Don't waste your cooldowns. Don't group up.
Stay spawn together.
Right. Yeah. It's just it's oh gosh. It's so there's these fundamental, not just little that's how you play the game, right? And they don't talk about it. So no wonder you have so many lower ranked players. So for me, it's okay, if this is the direction we're going to go, I would like to see Overwatch actually release a proper tutorial, right, about the maps are really, really big, so you might want to experiment with taking flanks, but obviously play around just different things like that, or have more sponsored content of some I don't know, but that's my private vendetta with Overwatch, because that's my whole spiel is positioning and flanks and angles.
But I mean, maybe that's something they do more with integrating with OWL, if they can kind of make the OWL ecosystem more accessible to the casual player base, and you see more OWL content coming out, so that it's not the dev team necessarily kind of setting the curriculum of Overwatch, but let's say an Al meta develops and you get guest coaches on, like, rather than just like the analysts who are like diamond players themselves talking about, wow, this headshot's really good. They
Yep.
Which is like, I just never watch Watchpoint because it's just like the most grim analysis ever. Like if you get a coach to come on and talk about this is what's changed this month, this is what we learned, this is what we realized, something like that, and then you can then integrate that into the main game. Like you can have like a whatever monthly series on this is what the Al coaches have worked on, and people can learn like that.
That would be awesome, and I think it's like, I mean, and I think people like appreciate that. Like I know that I, even before I really understood or knew the game, before I even coached the game, I always liked Uber and Mr. X, and not just because Uber was crazy, funny, intense, man, but because I honestly liked Mr. X. I felt like he said some like smart things and like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Because he was a COD pro, wasn't he? So like he has like an insight on it.
Right. So he was like an actually like relatively intelligent analysis. I haven't watched a lot of it recently. I don't know how it's held up. But even at like a bronze, silver, gold player like I was at the time, I could kind of tell like, oh, I like that kind of like more like they're not talking down to me. You know what I'm saying? There's a very I don't know how much professional American football you watch, but there's a very famous American football quarterback named Tony Romo, and he retired and basically went into casting, and he's making bank right now because he is just off of retirement a couple years ago, and he'll sit there and he'll break it down and be like, well, they should be running this play right here. And he'll sometimes predict like what play that they're about to do in the next thing. And it's like, people eat that up. I not only is he personable, but like he's actually extremely qualified. He knows the game. And so it's like, it's very, very fun to watch. And this is coming from somebody who does, like, I enjoy American football, but I'm not like a professional at analyzing it. Right. So like, so I feel like it would be really cool, like with this whole Overwatch 2 direction of where these kind of more advanced concepts that just haven't been talked about are coming into the era, that we see more of that, not just with Overwatch League, but also just with like the game itself. You purchase the game, the tutorial talks about it, or at least introduces you to these concepts, because nobody talks about this. Like Overwatch has an infamously bad introductory stage. It really just kind of throws you in there.
Your left click shoots.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. So just like, good luck. Hope you figure it out, man. And that's why you see these plat borders stuck in silver. I joke, but like still, it's rough.
Yeah, people mention Jake as well. It's the same thing. Like Jake doing the educational content where he'll go in ranked and he'll talk about what he's doing, and he'll cast and he'll talk about like from a professional perspective. I like that as well.
Yeah,
and I think that's what's kind of lacking in like especially upcoming casters, like the people in contenders, is that they're kind of like trying to, oh, my bosses tell me that my audience is gold, I have to keep it to gold, and they kind of limit what they try and talk about.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like demeaning. Like it's like, come on, like people are smarter than that. They'll figure it out. Like people like I see. You know what the most triggering comment for me ever, the criticism for me, is every now and then I'll see a comment or criticism. Oh, he's good, but you're not gonna really understand it unless you're like top OD or something like that. Like my streams, I'm like, are you joking? Like that makes me mad. I'm like, man, like come on, like people are not that stupid. They'll figure it out.
I think
right?
Something people forget is that like people who are like, look at the devs, right? Those people are like, I don't know, gold, or some of them are silver or gold in the game that they work on all day. But those people are like gods at like, graphic design or modeling or Blender or whatever. Like most of the people who play this game have like a job that they do like because they're good at it. Like people aren't like idiots.
No, exactly.
They just don't know Overwatch.
Exactly. And I think like if it's explained to them in a decent way, they'll be able to figure it out. I mean, Renee, you and I are just gonna have to become casters now. That's just how it's gonna have to be. So like, I think we've got the resume for it. I've got a big mouth. You've got a big mouth, and we both speak English, which is, I think, helpful. Okay, actually, quick question. Do you know the answer to this? Does anyone in the chat? For the Korean viewers, do they watch it on a separate entity than YouTube? Do they have different casters for different nationalities at all?
They have a Korean cast, I think.
Okay,
and a Chinese cast.
Yes, they must have Korean and Chinese, if nothing else. Okay, I'm seeing.
I think there's a Portuguese one. I remember them announcing Portuguese cast
really?
as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, they watch in Bilibili. Yeah. I know of that. Okay, makes sense. That makes sense. That's cool. Okay. Well, Renee, I really appreciate you coming on, mate. Thank you not only for taking the time to type this all up, but also discuss it for an hour and a half now. So it was super, super nice. Do you have like a plug for your Twitter or anything else that you have? I mean,
my Twitter's not very exciting. No worries.
Well, you're not.
I'll just like maths tweets, and then people would unfollow me again, so it's fine.
Sure.
I'll put it in chat if anyone cares.
Please do. But yeah, thank you for coming on, mate. So those of you guys all know Renee, the off tank and founder of Ex Oblivione, the most successful open division project ever. 2 years and running still. So thanks again for coming on, mate. And again, thank you for typing all this up. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, cheers, mate.
All right, have a good day.
You too. All right, so that was a Mr. Renee. So he was helping me out with some of that stuff, and hopefully you guys found the educational. So I think that here's the takeaway. Here's the TLDR about the whole thing. There is a lot of negative right now, and it's justified. I'm not saying pretend that it's not there. We don't have to sugarcoat anything. It's scary and it's concerning, but there are some positives as well. And we're lying to ourselves if we're saying that there isn't some like a significant potential upside for this. We just don't know, and it is normal to be like, it is like acceptable and normal to be scared and concerned and like I said, and skeptical, like big skeptical. I'm skeptical, I'm concerned, but we also can be reasonable with it as well, because I'm reading through a lot of these Reddit and Twitter comments and I'm like, come on guys, like at least be sensible with your takes. Like this is just panic, you know. This is just typical human behavior. Like we're better than that, you know. So I'm skeptical. I'm sitting there like, okay, you're gonna do something crazy like this. Well, okay, make it work, you know. And we kind of talk about the positives and negatives, but there's plenty to be negative about without being, you know, hysterical. Have we talked about the release timing with Overwatch League? Yeah, they're gonna have to do it like fall, winter. It's gonna be awkward for winter for sure, because teams are already like signing players and staff at that point. But it's gonna have to be somewhere around there. Yeah, there's a lot of bad things about it. The main thing, off-thing synergy for sure. Yeah, I mean, people hate the unfamiliar. That's just how it is. Like that's without like I'm gonna tell you, like people hate the unfamiliar. People hate change. That's just how it is. They like the things the way they like it this way, but unfortunately, like Overwatch is kind of in a position to where like something kind of needs to change. They need to stir up the water a little bit if this thing is going to stick around for a lot longer, because it's the competitive side of things. I think the balance is really good. I enjoy it, playing it, but it is a little stale for content creation. It's stale for new players. It's stale for casuals to an extent as well. And obviously the pros would like things interesting. Like even the pros pros are getting spoiled in terms of balance right now. But the pros are also playing the same heroes that they've been playing for like 13 months, you know? They like, I wouldn't mind a little bit of imbalance just to try something new. You know what I'm saying? Now, 5v5 is definitely a drastic and aggressive change. Like, ooh, I don't know if that's the kind of change that I want, but it is a change. So, like, I guess we just kind of like wait and see, you know? So, give me just a moment, chat. Give me just a moment. Yeah, okay, so we have one review I'm gonna do. One review I'm gonna do. So we're gonna keep today's stream relatively short. I wanted to kind of keep it on this the topic of Overwatch 2, but we do have a VOD review that we're going to do, so we're gonna crank that one out real fast. Do you agree with the notion of pros should lead the direction of the game for lower SR players? No, I don't agree with that. But I also don't. Here's my thought. I think that pros should have a heavy hand in balancing the game. But I also think how it impacts lower ranks should be included as well. Like there just has to be a balance. I think it just has to be a balance. Because I think this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think that what is like, you need to find an idea of like what's balanced for higher ranks and what's enjoyable for lower ranks. I think balance at lower ranks is not something that you should consider too much. Because balance for lower ranks is a complete toss, like it's a dice roll. They're gonna play what's easy, and so that's my thought process on it. But for example, like we could put this for like a hero like Moira. Like I don't mind Moira existing in lower ranks, But is she enjoyable at lower ranks? No? Okay, well then that probably needs a look at. But let's make sure that we don't buff her to the point to where she's meta and now she's being played at higher ranks. Yeah, Twitter is full of emotional teenagers right now. Like the problem with the pros is the pros are teenagers. That's the problem. So I think you can clip this if you want. I think pros, contenders, tier 3, GM, Overwatch League should be heard and should have their opinions stated, and their opinions on the game are probably are definitely more accurate than the average Joe Schmo Plat nobody. But at the same time, they are not de facto more qualified than game developers because they don't do this for a job, and they also have a tendency to flip out and overreact to everything and anything that's ever posted. Like it's every single meta that we have. It's this X hero is the most broken hero in the history of the game. We talked about Echo being an AC 130, and then now Echo's not even played anymore, and now McCree is a new broken thing. Now they're not wrong. McCree is very strong, but like the problem with the Overwatch League pros and the contenders pros is they're all young and they all have a tendency to overreact. The pro player experimental patch was a dud. I mean, I thought that was a joke, to be perfectly honest. If that was unironically pro players giving that, like, I don't know what they were smoking. But yeah, like, if that was an unironic attempt at, like, some pro player balance, then yes, that was a dud. Because that was, like, some of the worst balance changes I've ever seen in the history of the world. Exactly, Graphic. Exactly. They're more likely to be negative as well. It was just content? Was it? Okay, well that's good to know. That makes me sleep at night, because when I first saw that I was like, oh. Well, but the problem with that Molfig is some of them looked like they were like legitimate like attempts. Like, oh, 5% more damage on this and that, and like less fault. Wasn't it like the Junkrat ones that were like ridiculously like specific? All right, if it was just content, I'll take your word for it. But like, I don't know. It was poorly executed content, because we could have gotten a lot more fun in Cancer if that was indeed the case. I'm so distracted right now because they're trying to be fun on camera. Oh, okay. Wrecking Ball, thank you for the sub, mate. I appreciate it. I'm not really sure that I've forgiven you for killing me yesterday in Mystery Deathmatch. That's probably the worst I've ever played on stream. I'm not going to sleep for a week based off of how I played. I mean, Torb with 2 turrets, yeah. Can eat Ash Dynamite. Can't eat Ash Dynamite. Yeah, Jake, maybe just Jake tryharded. Yeah. Alright, Singtra, tier 120, main tank replay in Volskaya. We're going to be doing Masters main tank in Volskaya. So let me actually change the thing here, because it says bronze and it says owl, so it's not technically. Wait, is this all Rhine? Is this all Rhine? I mean, is this all Rhine? Man, this is a short VOD. I'm gonna have to like really take my time with this one.
Ready for battle.
All right. Let's take our time. 3,500. I mean, I'm gonna assume this is a you know what? Actually, screw you. If you're 3,500, you're Master Diamond. You're Daster. You're Disaster. You're Mimond. I'm not giving you Masters just because you get 3.5. Well, this is your payback? Payback implies that you're paying me back for doing something wrong to you. This is your apology, I think is what you mean to say. Don't talk about Soon's tracer changes. Jeez, yeah. Okay, let's do this. So, Masters Rhine, HP management, corner cover, control space, etc, etc, etc. Not a whole lot to say here. I'm going to be seeing about like how you play around your HP, how much you play around your shield, your use of cover, your use of corner, and the use of controlling space. Now, we've gone over this map before, and we talked about how like you can control high grounds and things like that. It's going to be a lot more relevant on first fight, but yeah. So let's just wait and see. Chat, the most important thing you can do as main tank to have immediate impact is select a proper kill box. All right, without knowing what the enemy composition is, where do you think that team 1 will most likely want to kill box? In other words, where do you think they'll most likely like look to trade or pressure? Graphics, I don't want to take the time to think about that because, to be honest, I'm kind of a scrub when it comes to that. So don't take my opinion. Yeah, probably at the choke. So you do not want to kill box here because your hitskin's gonna have dog LOS there. But you also don't want to give up the entire space, because I'm looking at the composition right now and I'm like, oh, they're on Brawl, but they have a damage boosted Ashe. So I'm like, I don't want to give them a lot of space because the damage boosted Ashe is going to take my lunch money, right? But at the same time, I do not want to stuff them at the choke because my hit scans are going to have no LOS, and also the Junkrat's going to get way too much value. So I think for me, I would want to play truck here somewhere along these lines and let them walk through the choke and trade here. That way you can start to have like angles on their backline just from here or here, without giving their Ashe too much space, and I can deny some of their Junkrat spam. Now, what I've just done is done an over analysis of a relatively basic situation here. Like you don't need to take as much time to analyze this, but you as a Reinhardt have to use your brain. Don't just say, I'm playing Rein, I hold choke. That is the quickest way to lose a fight. If you're rolling out on this and you like look and you've got a Sigma and you've got a Widow and you've got a Zen, you should not be on the choke. You should be on high ground up here. You should be on high ground up here. You could be on high ground up here, and you would be holding like this choke or this choke where you have great sniper angles and things like that, right? Or maybe soft pressuring here. If you're playing like Reaper May, right? You're not going to be playing back high ground. You're going to be stuffing this thing here. You're going to let them out and you're going to run on top of them. But you have to kind of like adjust what you're doing based off of the composition that you see. So it's really important that we adjust here. But like even that right there, you have to be really careful. Yeah, so your team is just backed off. Team is just backed off. Change the title spiral? Rip me. I'm so bad at this. Title coaching Rein. All right. So like this is kind of what I was talking about in terms of like where you're actually holding, because I don't want you I don't want you burning so much resource before they even get to the choke, because like right now this is when you want to be pushing. Do you see what the problem is here? So I don't know who bubbled you here, but this is an imp. Wait, you got bubbled here, never mind. So it's like this right here, this like a little bit of HP that you've burned and this little bit of shield that you've burned. You really don't want that to be an issue here, okay? Because like this optimally, do you remember what we talked about where we trade on? We traded on here. You should have started here, avoided any spam early on, peeked for a fire strike if you needed to, and then been pushing into them with bubble now, right? And the thing is you also need to be communicating this to your team, because you're in Masters now, okay? You don't need to be like shot calling like Mr. Chad, you know, Mrs. Chad, whatever. You just need to say, okay, I'm holding here, I'm holding this space, like I hold here. Like, so you need to be dictating where the fight's happening by setting up properly, and then letting your team know exactly where you're looking to take the fight, okay? So that they can set it properly, because you can look at your team here. It's not all your fault because it is kind of questionable. Like, look, but do you see the problem? Like your Ana swings wide right into a Junkrat grenade that she shouldn't have run into. Your McCree's just gone, and so is your soldier. Now your McCree's going for a flank, which is fine, but you're missing like 2 members of your team. And look at your Zarya kite path as well. Your Zarya is in a terrible spot to kite back to point. So your entire team is split on whether we're fighting here or whether we're kiting here. And you need to be making that call. So I need you to be more communicative about where you're fighting, and also make sure that you're not getting your shield and HP burned before you fight where you want. So if you want to fight here, I don't want you at 350 HP before the fight even starts. I don't want you missing 350 shield before the fight even starts, which is exactly the situation that we're putting here, and we never really recover. And I mean, you can kind of see how, like, as you guys have opened up and started to take flanks and angles, this team is starting to lose. I don't know what where their Ashe is. Okay, she just died. But you're basically like you're baiting them in, then you're punishing, and now your DPS are like, oh, they're all focusing on Rein. Well, guess what? We're gonna kill all of them by ourselves. So this is kind of what you want. I would still play this very slowly though. Like, there's no real... So this is a mistake. This pen, fine. What should our Ryan be doing right now? Think about it. Are we going to give up a tick here? Mm-hmm. Are we going to give up 2 ticks here? Yup. Yup. So how are we going to win this? How are we going to win this? I need to update the VOD command as well. You've got to be kidding me. Hands, edit, VOD, masters, Ryan. The only way you're going to win this is by the positions that your team controls right now, which are the high grounds and the flanks, okay? So what you can be doing right now as we walk, you know that you've lost the brawl. You're not going to be able to hold anything resembling a choke anymore because you're down to supports. You can go high ground, and I want you to go high ground and shield for your soldier. Shield for your soldier. And what he'll do is he'll spam out whoever's on point. And if they start to push your McCree, then you guys can drop and push them. And then if they are about to cap, then you can drop and touch on point. Because right now you're accomplishing nothing. You're baiting attention, but you're trading your life for it. We don't like that. We like you baiting attention and surviving. Or if you know that you're not going to get healing or support, then you just surviving in a safe location. So this is a very awkward situation because it's a very niche and specific bit of feedback for the situation that we're in right now. But what I'm trying to highlight is that how you are going to win because your DPS have flanks and angles. And your job as Reinhardt is to either hold a location where your team can shoot there, or to allow these flanks and angles to work by shielding. Okay? So right now you're just going in, but you're not doing anything. You're baiting a little bit of attention, but you're very, very quickly going to die for it. Very quickly going to die for it. And your McCree didn't even, like, look, your McCree's fine. Like, he's fine. He's good. He doesn't need your help. I mean, this fight is still actually unironically winnable. Like, if your soldier gets one more pick, this thing is winnable. There it is. And he still has high ground. Oh, he fed. And like, you just haven't done jack. Your poor soldier's like, how many do I have to kill? Holy moly. So here's the feedback. You win based off of map control, high grounds, flanks, and angles, as the ones that your DPS want to hold. So you look at your comp, another great thing. So we talk about where you want to take the fight. Actually, something you can do before that is you can talk to your DPS, be like, hey, McCree, soldier, where do you guys want to play? Like, where do you guys like, you playing high ground here? Like, where you gonna rotate back to here? Take that information of where they want to play, and then think about how you should play around it. No, I don't think Ryan will push him up the stairs and kill him anyway. I don't think he will. No, I don't think he will. And the thing is if he does, so you look at the time here. Look at the time here. You actually walk into him. He doesn't have speed. You're gonna walk all the way up here. And if he does chase him, well, guess what? The people on point no longer have a shield, and they're no longer capping point. So yes, they can chase you off of high ground, but they're going to waste a lot of time, and they're going to take a while to catch you, and they're not going to be able to capture point. And meanwhile, even if they did chase you and eventually killed you, you've wasted so much more time, and they've got no capture percentage while they're doing that. So it's like, the idea is that is without getting too complicated, because this is a weird fight, man. Like, weird fight. You know what I'm saying? But the idea is that simply you're going to win based off of where your DPS and supports want to play, and you playing around that. And I would think you need to do a better job communicating, or figuring out, like, not figuring out, but like talking with them / using your eyeballs. Because for all of you silver, gold, and platinum Reinhardts are like, well, my teammates don't want to ever talk, you know. Well, then look, use your eyeballs. You have to be aware of where they're set up. Because actually, before the fight even starts here, and this is something I should have brought up, before the fight even starts, do you see where your soldier's set up? Do you see? Your soldier can't do anything at choke. You see this? This is very weak, but it's very strong here. You kind of see what I'm saying? So when I'm saying, like, I was like, I don't want you to stuff against the damage boosted Ashe. I don't want you to kite against the damage boosted Ashe. Okay, screw what I said. I'm a moron. If your soldier's on the back high ground, yeah, he probably shouldn't do that against the damage boosted Ashe, but you know what? If that's what he's gonna do, you play around it. I'd rather you play around it and maybe he'll find a way to pick this damage boosted Ashe than for you to feed here thinking that you're gonna get follow-up. That's just not there, right? Now, if you guys are playing silver and gold and you got a Junkrat right here and you got a McCree right here or a Reaper right here, then you can stuff the choke because your DPS are clearly set up to fight there. So play around where your DPS are set up. That's all. What is going on? What is going on? What is going on? What is going on? Ah! Poggers. Get him, get him, get him, get him. Nice. Get him, get him, get him. Be careful about pushing in there. Be careful. Nice. Nice. I know it's awkward to push in locations like that. Like, that's just how it is. Like, your kill box is like out here and they're all stuck in there. You guys have to like stack up and push in as one, but your soldier's like not over there, and like it's awkward. Don't worry about it. Now again, I have to ask, is this really where you want to hold? Is this really where you want to hold? Do you see the problem here? Now, your soldier is going to swing wide here and maybe he's going to get a good angle here, but you've already seen that your DPS were playing like back high grounds, and do you even look? Well, the last I saw, the last you saw, your soldier was on the back high ground. I mean, you need to check here, because if your McCree's playing this back high ground here or rotating, you don't want to hold here. You see like how like quickly you're like, look at like how quickly you're in a bad situation here, right? How quickly you're in a bad situation. The idea is that you want a Reinhardt that plays aggressively around the space that he should. Okay? In other words, your Reinhardt is very aggressive on this choke because he knows his DPS have great spam here. Or on this choke because you guys have a Mei wall, right? Or something like that. This is very much, I'm playing very aggressive, but then, wait, my DPS aren't doing anything. Okay, I'm gonna kite up, and now I'm on the back foot, so I no longer can play aggressive on this choke because I've already gotten chunked before the fight even starts. He has Lucio, and enemy doesn't. Yes, that definitely is something that makes me want to hold choke a little more, but I'm just looking and I see both my DPS completely MIA and 2 over 1. You know what I'm saying? 2 over 1. And you could still speed onto the enemy here. You don't have to like stuff chokes with Lucio. Lucio's good at that, but he's flexible. Because like look again what's happening. Look again what's happening. Bang, right? He's not doing that if you're stuffing chokes. I think that grab a shadow was fine. Don't get greedy. If you can solo shadow somebody and kill them, or like like not necessarily solo even kill them, but if you like shadow this Zarya and put her out of the fight for like 3 or 4 seconds or 2 or 3 seconds, and your team can get some good spam in her, and maybe you can force bubbles and force nade and stuff, that's okay. Like, don't get greedy. Okay, again, you're not even turning around. You have I'm not sure if you're communicating with your team right now, but again, do you see the problem here? You're holding space that your team just doesn't want to play around. Like, your soldier spam is going to be weak here, your McCree spam is going to be weak here, and like your McCree ends up dropping and rotating in
the cards for you.
But I don't care if it ends up working out because your DPS end up dropping. That's luck. You need to you need to actively look. Find a new insult. Give me a topic. Give me a topic. Give me something to work with, and I'll make up an insult. We'll get a new insult. Like chipmunk, rock. Uh-oh. Okay. So soldier gets punished. here, right? Now, Soldier's not playing around you now. It's understandable for you to kite out. Sea Life. Jellyfish don't have functional brains, and yet they still have the self-awareness to actually pay attention of what's going on around them. You don't. 5 out of 10? 6 out of 10? Okay. It wasn't my best, but it got the job done. Okay, but yeah, so like you look at this now and I see my McCree in a flank and I'm like, hey, guess what? What does this McCree in a flank mean for me? Like I can play like now like my McCree is in, so like I can start to kind of aggress at this point in time. Now where you want to aggress is up to you. I look at this and I'm like, this Ashe is on high ground. I'm kind of spooked. I might want to push into this Rein this way, but I'm curious to see what you're gonna do. You have to pick a side. Ah! Probably not necessary, but whatever. 69 out of 100. That's poggers. But what did he do? Oh. Unfortunate. Do it. Let it rip. Where should our Rein be right now? Here's another little trick to think about. If you have decided, based off of your DPS's positioning, that you are no longer stuffing choke and that you're holding, like your team is like holding back high ground, where should you position as Reinhardt? Where should you position? If you are no longer stuffing the choke here, for whatever reason, based off of your DPS's positioning, where should you as Reinhardt position then? Hey, kitty! Right here. Right? Why? Xingtra. Or Xingtra, excuse me. Why? I mean, your idea wasn't wrong, Trippy Triangle. But why? Anybody in chat can answer this. Why would, if you're not gonna stuff choke and get value out of your swings and stuff here, why would you position here? What do you contribute here? You can shield your DPS, exactly. You can allow your DPS to hold this space here for a long time. And they're gonna walk underneath you to point. Now, here's the deal, Xingtra. You are going to have to drop at some point. When they get to point or to the choke, maybe you can drop. Because you only have one tick to give. But you drop when you have to drop, not beforehand. Because what are you doing right now? Are you creating space? Are you holding space right now? Are you holding the choke? No. Because the reason you hold on not high ground here is because you hit them with your hammer as they try and walk into the choke. So if you're not going to hit them with the hammer, or even threaten them with the hammer, then what are you doing? What are you doing here? Like, I get the Riptire, but like pretend even the Riptire's, pretend the Riptire's not existing, okay? What would you be doing here? What would you be doing here? Maybe hit the Moira, maybe, okay, right? But do you really need to hit the Moira? It's just gonna get shot anyway. What would you accomplish here? You don't do anything. You just kind of stand there. Remember, we talked about this in our Overwatch 2 discussion about how like this whole like archaic idea of just standing AFK and shield botting in main instead of like enabling offense. Like, look at where your McCree is. Do you see this? This is really scary for you because your McCree now no longer has the LOS to contest this pharmacy. And why does he drop, you ask? That's why. You could have stopped that from happening. Amari! Amari! Come here! She's being whiny. I don't know if you guys hear that. Does that make sense, Singtra? I want you holding chokes or touching point when your presence is needed there. When you can actually hold space and punish enemies for going there. But if there's nothing on the choke, or that choke just isn't that important, or you're not even holding that choke, find a high ground to hold. Shield, come here. What's wrong? This is a pretty advanced concept. But you feel useless? You feel useless? Because you are. Do you feel useless? Do you feel useless? You look useless. And what ends up winning this fight? Your McCree going back to high ground. That ends up winning this fight. You absolutely got carried. Look at your McCree. Look at your McCree. Look at your McCree.
All patched up. Hold up.
The whole game you felt useless. It's because you have no idea where to position. You have no idea where to position. You're not looking at your DPS and deciding about whether what choke you should be holding. And then when there is no choke to hold, you stand in the middle of nowhere and just hope something happens. So I want you, well, we're gonna keep watching. But do you feel, I want to confirm your feeling of feeling useless. You're right, you were useless. Right? But not because you're bad or stupid or mechanically bad, but because where you were set up, you literally could do nothing. There was nothing to do. And then if you were to do something like stuff the choke, you would have died because you had 2 DPS in Narnia. No wonder you can't do jack. It's like trying to cook with like it's like trying to drive an oven. It doesn't work, Mom. I'm a terrible driver. No, son, you're driving an oven that is used for cooking oatmeal, not for driving. No wonder you're struggling. It has nothing to do with you as a person or an individual. You're just dumb as rocks. I didn't mean that. Like, it sounded a lot better in my head. It's like one of those. They just literally just came out. I wasn't thinking, so I apologize. I apologize to the rocks, of course. Okay, now I want you to think about this. I want you to think about this. It's not you, it's your brain. Heart. As Reinhardt, where do you think you should go? What do you think this Reinhardt should do, chat? And what, okay? What do you think this Reinhardt should do? Look at the composition. Do you think if we walk through choke and run all the way to point, that's going to help us at all? Right, and you need to rotate high ground because you need to help get rid of this guy. You need to get rid of this chick, right? You need to allow your Widow to set up here, or your Ashe to set up here, or your Ana to set up here, and then you can go to point. Or you can rotate this way and get rid of the Ashe off of this high ground, and get rid of and avoid the Hog and Ana flank entirely, and spam the BAP off of point. Right, and to get rid of the ball in the flank. You kind of see what I'm saying? Like you're gonna go out and you're gonna get rid of some of their high ground control and get rid of some of their flanks and get high ground and flank control for yourself. So it's not only getting rid of their high ground and flank control, it's giving your DPS the opportunity to flank and to control high grounds on their own. Because if you just rotate down main, you're not giving your team high ground. You're not, because remember, here's the little tidbit for today's Rein coaching stream. Contest or take space that your team actually wants. Your team doesn't want space here. That doesn't help them. Sometimes it would help them, like if you're playing a Reaper Mei Moira composition, it might help them. But against this comp, they don't want that. They want to get rid of this nincompoop, and that nincompoop, and this nincompoop, and that nincompoop. And they want this high ground, and this flank, and this angle. Your Widow's not going to sit here, right? Your Ashe isn't going to sit here. Okay? So I'm just waiting to be disappointed. Oh, so much HP missing. Good. You need to call. He needs to go. No, you do not. Okay, well, he's gone. No, go, move, go west, young man. And this is where you can say, guys, I'm going to shield. Everybody rotate right. Now, this is, I'll be honest, I don't generally give rank specific advice. This is more master specific advice because I don't trust golds, plats, silvers, or even diamonds to follow this, right? But you're in masters, like they'll listen most of the time, and if they don't, GG, go next, right? But like say, guys, stack, I'm gonna shield through the choke, rotate, and smash this Roadhog, break his butt, okay? Sorry. Okay, so if your team refuses to rotate as well, at the very least, shield off one of the angles. So like right here, you go in, you swing. If your team if you're not going to call for your team to rotate, or you're not going to rotate yourself, then I don't want you chasing this hog here. You say you're kind of like spending a lot of time blocking this hog, like going in there and swinging. Don't do that. Shield off the hog, make sure that he can't do anything, and then like look, okay, where's that Ashe? Can I shield off that Ashe? Can I defend that angle? Can I defend against that angle? If I hear ball slamming on my backline, that means that I need to chill for a second because my team is peeling that off. That's the kind of mindset you need to be in, not getting slapped. Oh no. Are we rotating? Like, what are we doing here? Are we where are we just gonna go in this general vicinity? Because just because you're in McCree doesn't change anything. The point of the thing is like, where does your McCree want to go? What do you need to remove? Well, nothing has changed. You need to get rid of that. Go. Okay. Are we not? If we don't get rid of it, then we need to rotate away from it. So guys, I'm gonna shield you this way. Go take high ground. Right? Fine. I want you to take more leadership for this, right? So here's the thing, is like, this is such a weird VOD for me because it does feel like you're kind of trying, but it feels like so many of these things that you could have better or like more impact or do a better job in different little ways. Like either through communicating better, either through shielding this rotation better, or through positioning this high ground better. But like, it feels like I'm being nitpicky here, but it's always like little things that you're missing because you're just not looking at the game in the proper way. So my goal is at the end of this VOD isn't to give you a quick tip or trick or how to shield bounce better, or I want you to focus on shield management more. No, I want you to look at the game differently of how Reinhardt can help deal with these weird comps, because playing Reinhardt into this, if you're not disciplined, if you don't know what you're doing, can make a grown man weak, right? Like again, do you see what you're doing? You're just rotating through, but you're not even bothering to check. Hey, where's the ball? Is there a ball in our backline? Is there a hog in the flank? Because your team needs you to help rotate. You can't just walk out here. Like, look at where you're set up here too. Because you're thinking, I'm shielding, guys. I'm shielding. I'm creating space. Do you even know where your backline is? What are you doing? Push this hog. Check to make sure ball's not going, and then rotate. Like, this is hard. This is the hardest Rein matchup there is. I mean, not across the board, but like this kind of situation is ridiculously difficult to play Rein into. But we can be doing a much better job. And you see how you're like, look at what you're doing right now. You're shielding a ball. You're shielding a ball, right? Do you know where their Ashe is? Like, I appreciate that we're respecting the ball, but you don't shield the ball. Rotate, rotate, rotate. Are you asking to go top left? Was that a communication? So honestly, Synctra, like, do you use voice communication much at all? Were you shot calling this or calling rotations at all? Because I don't know whether I should be flaming for you for this at all or not. Because if I shouldn't, then that's fine. But I want to know. Again, like this rotation is so slow. And this hog just goes for a flank. Is this on? Are we going high ground? Are we not going high ground? The Ana looks completely lost. You had 2 in voice chat. So let's focus on this. I'm not going to nitpick you for sloppy rotations and all that kind of stuff right now. Like, that's obviously going to be a little bit out of your control, but I want you to try and clean this up whenever you can. Call if there's people in there, and then just go. And if this kind of crap happens, unlucky, go next. Don't worry about it. Use. Group, yeah, you could spam group up as well. Yeah, sure. Good. Go. Go. Yes. Doesn't matter. They're screwed. Now, I don't know like how this ult make is going to work out because they still have Bob and they might build another Riptire here, but you from a macro perspective are in a much better position to win this fight. Now, I know it's very tempting to do something here. I know it's very tempting for you to just like drop and pin off of high ground, but I don't want you to do that. I want you to continue to clear off this high ground. Please be careful, dude. Please be careful. Holy smokes. Like, this fight is won if we just don't die to mines. And you win. I mean, that's all there is to it. You make one proper rotation, clearing them off of high ground and flanks, and it's over. Reinhardt can just not, he just can't be matched on the flank. Like, if you meet Reinhardt versus Ball, Reinhardt versus anything on a flank, Reinhardt just wins. So you did the right thing once. Now, I'm not going to hold you responsible for all of the errors that happened earlier. In fact, I won't hold you responsible for most of the errors. But whether that's better voice communication, grouping up, whatever the case may be, I need you to be taking more active leadership with clearing high ground, and I want you to be in the whole mindset of, if I need to be clearing space or holding space on defense, that actually matters to my team. And I want you to look at the composition that you're running and decide what that's going to look like. If I'm running a Mei, Mei wants to wall. This choke matters a lot to me. This space matters a lot to me. So you're going to hold the space. I'm running snipers. This space doesn't matter jack. The high grounds and this like little open space here matters a lot. So I'll hold this space. You know, we can move on to second attack. If I'm taking space here, right, and I'm playing like double sniper, right, I'm gonna get onto point and I'm gonna mostly chill and just try and like apply point pressure and like let my double snipers do their work. But if we're playing Reaper and Mei, I might even rotate all the way through left side and pin in through here because this high ground, these short like little off, these short sightlines are really good for my Reaper Mei. And sitting AFK on point is not gonna do anything. I have to actually push. So I want you looking at your DPS support line and adjusting where and how you're pathing and what space you're holding. I also recommend that you apply, like take what I've given you here, because this is a really, honestly, kind of, I'll be honest with you. Like, I know you knew this already, but this is a sucky VOD to send in. Like, this is just a weird VOD. So what I would do is take what we talked about in here and look on a couple of your other replays that you've played recently and see if you were holding chokes and holding space that actually mattered with the composition that you were playing. Did you actually clear the space? Did you actually hold the space that mattered? Or did you just AFK in main? Or did you run it down mid? Do you have any questions? Does that make sense? Do I need to explain anything again? If so, I don't mind explaining it. Does chat have any questions? Checking something quickly. You're taking a second to flush out your thoughts? Well, don't flush them out. You didn't have too many to begin with, so keep them. I'm joking. Altitude? Now you guys are just talking nonsense. I feel weird about pocketing high ground because I feel like better suited for like Orisa. Well, the difference between you and Orisa is that you can stay in high ground for a longer period of time. Yes, you put less pressure while you're there, but you can hold the space better, so they're less likely to be able to push you and clear you out, if that makes any sense. In other words, remember how like we talked about like on attack, you got to clear the high ground. Well, if there's an enemy Reinhardt playing into you as a Reinhardt, but you're already in high ground, it's rough for him to go and clear that high ground because he's going to be pushing into you with a hammer on a choke. Feels lowest value. Well, holding high ground isn't always the play, but it is the play if you have DPS that want high ground and you have nobody that's really getting benefit out of holding the choke. The same problem as... Right, so we'd have to look at your shield management and like your cover usage, because cover usage will allow you to, because remember, it's not just the shielding of high ground that's valuable. Listen to me. It's not just the shielding of high ground that's valuable. It's your presence there. It's your ability to be there and stand there and get value there. There's the value. Because you swinging your hammer and shielding is great. But even if you don't, your presence there makes it so the enemy team can't walk there and dive there and just get it for free. It's the same reason why you see Briggs, remember we talked about this yesterday, playing on high ground as well. Because it makes it uncomfortable for them to take away that location. You're literally just a big fat Brig. A big fat Brig. They can't walk up and just take that space because if they're going to walk into you. And that makes it scary. And so what you do is you say, oh, we want to hold here, we want to be here, well, I'm going to make it really hard for you to try and take this away from my team. This is why Reinhardt isn't very good on high ground maps, though. Because you're right. It's good to do it, but it is a little weird. It is definitely weird. Hard to run over position with Ryan Anderson. Exactly. So in maps with a lot of high ground, yeah, probably don't play Reinhardt. You can make it work, but probably not. There's other options there. But denying space is the phrase. Exactly. You hold that space. You hold the choke if your team wants to hold the choke. You don't hold the choke if your team doesn't really need to hold the choke. And what you need to do is not just get in that mindset, but I want you actually paying attention to what your composition is and where your team is set up. Like look at where your DPS and supports were. Because that gives you information on where to hold. Because if you're running snipers versus like Reaper May, I know those are the things that I'm always saying over and over again. Those are two very, very different kind of situations that will change how you position as Reinhardt. Do not just say I'm playing Reinhardt, I'm playing Joke. I want you to look at the composition that you're playing and adjust how you play around it. Okay. We're gonna host Renji. And if you have any additional questions, Syncro, you can just DM me. We're gonna host Renji. Should I have swapped heroes? No, it was fine-ish. Your team was just dog at rotating. I think it was fine. The Lucio was definitely awkward. I mean, this is why teams don't like playing Lucio unless they're like actually going Brawl, because it's like, what is he doing? So okay, yeah, we're gonna toss a host over to Renji. I don't know who this person is, but they look decent enough, and they're playing Junkrat, so that's gonna be fun. I'll see you guys on Saturday, most likely Saturday morning. I know we're gonna be doing a team bot review and some stuff, so I'll see you guys then. Yeah, cheers, mates. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for popping in, and I will see you guys in a couple of days. Cheers.